Chapter 3677. Seeing Xiao Ran walk back to the encirclement without putting up a fight, Xiao Hongsai's heart was moved, but she couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Why did you come back? This guy was obviously bluffing. Xiao Ran laughed bitterly. I had no choice but to come back. I've exhausted my true qi, so I can't leave even if I wanted to. Xiao Honkai shook his head speechlessly, but a warm feeling welled up in his heart. Before this, although he had repeatedly received Lin Yi's kindness and was grateful, he didn't have much of a sense of belonging towards his companion, Xiao Ran. However, in the moment when Xiao Ran resolutely turned back, he finally found a sense of belonging. Whether it was him or Xiao Ran, neither of them were Lin Yi's vassals or burdens. They were themselves. They were Lin Yi's group. Since you're back, why don't you hurry up and hand over the elixirs? Don't tell me you want me to do it myself? Meng Tong snorted coldly with a grin. Now that things had developed to this point, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai had completely lost the possibility of resisting and breaking out of the encirclement. Whether they cooperated or not, the final result would only be that the elixirs would be snatched away by Meng Tong's group. The only difference would be whether the scene would look good or ugly. As soon as Meng Tong said this, Li Zhengming and the other newcomer's eyes suddenly burned with passion. Previously, Xiao Hongsai's elixirs had been monopolized by him, so he could basically guarantee first place. This time, Xiao Ran had more than 500 points, so there shouldn't be a need for him to monopolize it, right? And if he took it out and distributed it to the others, who got more and who got less would be the key. Those who got more might be able to rush into the top 3 and obtain the Foundation Establishment Pill, while those who got less could only pray that they would be in the top 10, aiming for the consolation prize of 3 spiritual jades. Among the crowd, the one who was feeling the most anxious was Li Zhengming. Previously, Meng Tong had personally promised to give him half of his points. Li Zhengming himself already had 500 points. If he added half of Xiao Ran's points, then he would definitely be able to lock into the top 3 and obtain the building foundation pill that he yearned for day and night. A foundation establishment pill, to newcomers like them, was a priceless treasure that could only be encountered by luck and not sought for. Dilly-dallying. Looks like you're unwilling to hand it over. I'm giving you face, but you don't want it. In that case, I will reluctantly help you. Meng Tong grinned hideously. Unscrupulously, he pounced toward Xiao Ran. Just now, under the watchful eyes of so many people, he had actually been directly brushed aside by Xiao Ran. This had caused Meng Tong to lose face in front of so many of his lackeys. Now, Xiao Ran was so untactful. This was the perfect opportunity for him to get back at her, being surrounded by so many people. He did not believe that Xiao Ran would have the guts to resist. And if Xiao Ran dared to resist, that would give him an excuse to cripple both Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai at the same time. All he had to do was to say that it was an accidental injury in the chaotic battle. Fists and legs had no eyes. In this way, even the others would not be able to say anything. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai looked at each other, their hearts sinking. Just as Meng Tong had predicted, under this kind of situation, they really did not dare to resist. Otherwise, if they were to be surrounded and beaten up by so many people, not to mention crippling their cultivation, even if they were to be beaten to death, the law would not punish the masses. More importantly, they were both exhausted. Both of their true qi had been exhausted. Even if they had the heart, they did not have the strength to do so. Seeing that the two of them did not show any signs of making a move, Meng Tong could not help but curl his lips in disappointment. However, he did not intend to let the two of them go so easily. Even if he could not seize the opportunity to cripple the two of them, he would at least give them a vicious lesson to let them know the consequences of going against him. 1,000 kicks, 20 forms. Meng Tong used the same old trick again. Layers of afterimages of his legs went straight for Xiao Ran. He laughed sinisterly and shouted, "Aren't you very capable? If you have the ability, try dodging again." Xiao Ran gritted his teeth. That instant of using the shadow step had exhausted the last bit of his true qi. If he wanted to dodge the 1,000 kicks again, it would be a fool's dream. But if he did not dodge, he would definitely be heavily injured even if he did not die. Meng Tong, this bastard, would definitely not stop. Just as he was feeling hopeless and helpless, a light breeze suddenly brushed past him. A familiar figure quietly stood in front of him and laughed lightly. Do you still need to dodge such a crappy martial skill? What? When Meng Tong heard that, he was shocked. When he saw the person's face clearly, he was even more shocked. Lin Yi extended his palm slightly, intending to teach this guy a lesson so that he would remember it. However, he saw that Meng Tong had actually risked internal injuries to forcefully interrupt the 1,000 kicks 20 forms, which had already reached its peak power. Then, he hurriedly took a few steps back, directly retreating to the center of Li Zhengming and the rest. Everyone froze at the scene, including Lin Yi. What the fuck? Why didn't I realize that this guy was so cowardly in the past? To retreat without a fight under the eyes of so many people, or more accurately, he was scared off by a casual sentence from Lin Yi. Wasn't this too cowardly? Li Zhengming and the other rookies immediately looked at Meng Tong with extremely strange gazes. This kind of cowardly coward actually had the nerve to call himself the boss of the Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies? What are you looking at? This is a battle tactic, do you understand? You clearly have the advantage in numbers, yet you insist on fighting this idiot one-on-one. Do you think there's a hole in my brain? Meng Tong glared at the rookies guiltily as he roared fiercely. According to this guy's style of doing things that like to be in the limelight, if he wasn't afraid of Lin Yi, would he be so astute as to give up the opportunity to redeem himself? Although the rookies had their suspicions, they did not expose Meng Tong's nature of being fierce in appearance. They only silently added in their hearts. It seems like the experience of being defeated by Lin Yi in one move on the first day has left quite a psychological scar on this guy. Lin Yi smiled non-committally and turned to Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. Are the two of you all right? I'm fine, boss Lin Yi. Xiao Honkai shook her head excitedly. As for Xiao Ran, other than the unexpected joy in his eyes, there was also a deep sense of worry. You shouldn't have appeared at this time, really. Lin Yi naturally knew what he was worried about. He smiled faintly and said, It's fine. You have already done very well. Leave the rest to me. All right. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai nodded at the same time. At this point, other than believing in Lin Yi, they had no other choice. Facing the 12 Heaven Perfection experts led by Meng Tong, although they did not know where Lin Yi got his confidence from, at this moment, they began to unconsciously believe that Lin Yi might really have a way to solve this crisis. Chapter 3678. He had 12 Heaven Stage Great Perfection experts, but the opponent only had Lin Yi. Meng Tong had enough capital for him to be arrogant. Even if Lin Yi could he fight 12 experts of the same level? Bullshit. Lin Yi glanced at him and said with a smile that was not a smile, Didn't you see it today? But it's hard to say who is the idiot. Stubborn. There will be a time for you to cry later. Meng Tong sneered, then turned to the rookies and said, How to deal with this idiot who sent himself to our doorstep? I don't think I need to talk nonsense with you. As long as we snatch the herbs on him, not to mention the top 3, even the top 10 will be ours. In other words, whoever performs well, I will ensure that he enters the top 3, and the Foundation Establishment pill will be at our fingertips. The moment he said that, the eyes of the rookies lit up. If Lin Yi did not send himself to their doorstep, then other than Meng Tong, who was definitely the first in the trial, Lin Yi would have snatched one of the top 3 spots. After all, this guy's strength was not to be underestimated, and as there was no interference, he had enough time to collect the spiritual herbs to obtain points. Besides that, among the rookies, there was a strong competitor, Li Zhengming. Even if the other rookies wanted to fight for the top 3 Foundation Establishment pill reward, it would be very difficult. But now that the idiot Lin Yi had sent himself to their doorstep, the situation was very different. With this promise from Meng Tong, when they joined forces to deal with him, as long as they put in a little more effort, there was hope of entering the top 3. Looking at the group of eager rookies, Lin Yi looked at Meng Tong with some surprise. It seemed that this guy was not too stupid. Just now, when he sensed the danger, he immediately chose to admit defeat. Now, with a few words, he stirred up the fighting spirit of the rookies. He had quite the skill. Fists and feet have no eyes. If we were to besiege this pretentious newbie and accidentally kill him, I don't think the elders of the Back Mountain Hall would blame us, Meng Tong said in a meaningful tone. In this way, the newcomers who originally had some misgivings immediately unlocked their last shackles. In order to fight for the top 3 Foundation establishment pills as rewards, they were now besieged by 12 against 1. He would definitely go all out. Meng Tong immediately smiled in satisfaction. Not to mention Lin Yi. Even the most powerful Heaven Stage Great Perfection expert in history would not be able to survive the siege of 12 Heaven Stage Great Perfection experts. Most importantly, because of the 2 burdens Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, and because of that ridiculous morality, Lin Yi couldn't even run. Today was the day of Lin Yi's death. Lin Yi scanned the crowd slowly and saw that they were getting closer and closer. His face, however, wasn't as fearful as they'd imagined. Instead, he had a mocking smile on his face. I say, do you guys know who your opponent is yet? Huh? Isn't he just a country bumpkin from the secular world? He's already at death's door. What big words does the pretentious newbie want to say to disturb the hearts of the people? Ha ha ha! Meng Tong laughed wildly. The other newcomers were also indifferent. At this moment, in their eyes, Lin Yi was not a threat at all. Instead, he was a big pile of points. Looks like you've all been blinded by your own eyes. What a group of sad fellows. Lin Yi sneered, and then his expression turned serious. A powerful aura surged out from his body without reservation. In an instant, everyone's expression changed. The way they looked at Lin Yi was filled with disbelief and shock. This kind of powerful aura that was close to materialization was not something a Heaven Stage expert could possess. Even a Heaven Stage full circle expert was far from enough. It could only be an existence of a higher level, a Foundation establishment expert. Damn, when did this guy become a Foundation establishment initial stage expert? Meng Tong's heart trembled violently. After spending every day with Meng Jiuwang, he was very clear on what kind of level this kind of aura signified. If one's strength had not reached this level, it would be impossible to even put on an act. Not only him, but the other newcomers, such as Li Jingming, also unconsciously took a few steps back in shock. They looked at each other in disbelief. The 12 of them besieging a Heaven Stage full circle expert was a sure thing. But if they were facing a Foundation establishment initial stage expert, especially a strong person like Lin Yi, then the situation would be completely different. Although the Foundation establishment initial stage and Heaven Stage full circle seemed to be only separated by a thin line, they were 2 completely different realms. One was in the sky, and the other was on the ground. In the eyes of the cultivation world, a Foundation establishment initial stage expert was already considered to be a beginner. Although a Heaven Stage full circle expert sounded awesome, he was still a reserve cultivator. Most of the official sects on the Heaven Stage Island had a minimum requirement of accepting disciples at the Foundation establishment initial stage and above. As for the so-called Heaven Stage full circle expert, they didn't even bother to look at him. If it was said that it was possible to challenge those below the Heaven Stage, then there was no such possibility between the Heaven Stage full circle and the Foundation establishment initial stage. Simply put, even the weakest Foundation establishment initial stage expert could definitely crush the strongest Heaven Stage full circle expert in history. There was a complete qualitative difference between the 2. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, a total of 12 Heaven Stage full circle experts, they didn't dare to say that they had any chance of winning against a Foundation establishment initial stage expert. Even if everyone present went crazy and fought to the death with Lin Yi, their chance of winning was definitely less than 10%. And even if they won in the end, it would at most be a Pyrrhic victory. It was estimated that at least 10 of the 12 people would have to die here. In fact, this group of people was only tied together with Meng Jiuwang and Meng Tong because of benefits. When there were benefits, they might be able to work together, but in this kind of situation where they were obviously going to die, it was impossible for them to work for Meng Tong for nothing. Therefore, even a mere 10% chance of winning in theory was impossible for this group of people. It wasn't just the newbies, but even Meng Tong himself was completely stunned by Lin Yi. There was only one thought left in his mind. How did this idiot who couldn't even tell a good jade from a bad one become an early-phase Foundation practitioner all of a sudden? Not only was Meng Tong and his group scared out of their wits, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, who were standing behind Lin Yi, were also dumbfounded. They looked at each other and didn't know what to say. Chapter 3679. When did their boss break through? He had only been in the Welcome Pavilion for a short period of less than a month, and from beginning to end, he hadn't occupied any cultivation resources. This cultivation speed was a little too terrifying. Boss Lin, he was indeed Boss Lin. No wonder he had the confidence to deal with so many people. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai looked at each other, their eyes filled with admiration. Lin Yi winked at the two of them, then turned to the group of newcomers opposite him and said lightly, "Didn't you want to bully the few with numbers? I believe you won't mind me bullying the weak, right? Don't waste time. Hurry up and start. We still have to report back to the rear hall after the fight." Accompanied by his powerful aura, every word and sound hammered heavily on the ears of the rookies. They were already scared out of their wits, and at that moment, they were even more terrified. They lowered their heads, not daring to look Lin Yi in the eye, afraid that they would be the first sacrifice. Even when they faced Meng Jueguang, who was an even more powerful early-stage Foundation establishment expert, they had never felt so frightened. But now, facing Lin Yi, they deeply understood what it meant to tremble with fear. After all, no matter how strong Meng Jueguang was, he wouldn't be able to do anything to them. But Lin Yi was their true enemy, especially in a trial like this where they were allowed to attack each other. Even if Lin Yi crippled all of them in a fit of rage, he wouldn't be punished. More importantly, before that sentence, they were still planning to attack Lin Yi. They did not expect that in the blink of an eye, the strong and the weak would switch positions, and they became lambs waiting to be slaughtered. How could they not be afraid at this time, seeing that everyone began to collectively retreat? Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. Blue Cloud Pavilion had been weak for a long time, and now even this group of newcomers were so useless. Just now, they were all so proactive when they were bullying him with numbers, but now they immediately shrank back when they saw that the situation wasn't good. Grand Perfection Heaven Stage experts being so wretched, it was really embarrassing. Come on. Lin Yi didn't want to waste any more time and took a step forward. However, what he did not expect was that this seemingly harmless action had startled Uncle Meng Tong, who was the most nervous of them all. Without saying a word, he let out a howl. He actually scrambled and ran away. What the fuck, does this guy have no shame? Everyone present, including Lin Yi, was dumbfounded. He hadn't even done anything, yet he was already running away in terror. This guy had even claimed to be the boss of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Wasn't he a little too much? But no matter. Meng Tong, the so-called leader, did run away, and he ran away without hesitation. He was quite fast. Immediately after, Li Jingming also quietly escaped. He was a discerning person and could already see that Lin Yi was worried about Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, the two burdens who had no combat power. He didn't seem to have any intention of chasing after them. Moreover, Meng Tong had already taken the lead. If he didn't escape now, when would he? If there was one, there would be two, and there would be three. Seeing Meng Tong and Li Jingming run away one after another, the other newcomers also began to scheme in their hearts. One by one, they wanted to escape. However, Lin Yi wouldn't let them get what they wanted so easily. Did I say that you can leave? The next one who wants to escape. Don't blame me for not giving face to our fellow disciples. With one sentence, the originally restless newcomers suddenly turned pale. Although each of them still wanted to escape, they didn't dare to be the first to stand out. Although if they all scattered and escaped, even an expert in the early stage of Foundation establishment like Lin Yi would have a hard time stopping them. According to what he said, whoever dared to be the first to escape, he would definitely keep his eyes on the first person to kill. That was something he could definitely do. For a moment, the remaining newcomers didn't dare to move. Only then did Lin nod his head. Because he didn't expect Meng Tong to be so shameless, he actually made a mistake just now. Otherwise, if he had spoken earlier to intimidate them, he wouldn't have let Meng Tong and Li Jingming run away for nothing. After all, just as Li Jingming had speculated, there were still Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai standing behind him. Although if he really chased after Meng Tong, then no matter how fast Meng Tong's movement technique was, he could only wait to be captured. But if he did that, he wouldn't have the time to care about the other newcomers. If someone were to have crooked thoughts and take advantage of the time when he was chasing after Meng Tong to steal Xiao Ran's spiritual medicine, or simply cripple both Xiao Ran and Li Jingming, even an expert in the early stage of foundation establishment like Lin, he wouldn't be able to split himself. However, now that Meng Tong and Li Jingming had escaped, the remaining newcomers didn't dare to move anymore. This result was still considered good. Lin, he swept his gaze across the remaining newcomers. Everyone who was swept by his gaze was trembling with fear and trepidation, just like criminals who had been caught in the act and were waiting to be sentenced. Their fate was now completely in the hands of Lin Yi. Although it was impossible for Lin Yi to do something as infuriating as crippling everyone present, it was entirely possible for him to beat everyone up for Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai as punishment. Putting themselves in their shoes, if they were in Lin Yi's position, they would probably make the same choice. Otherwise, it would be difficult to dispel the hatred in their hearts. However, what Lin Yi said next made everyone heave a sigh of relief. I won't make things difficult for you. As long as each of you takes out spiritual medicine that is equivalent to 100 points, I can let you go. Of course, if you don't cooperate, I can only choose a more violent method. How you choose, it's up to you. Originally, they thought that all the elixirs on them would be confiscated, and that would be the minimum punishment. They would be lucky if they didn't have to suffer any physical pain. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be so merciful to them? Although these people didn't have much time to collect spiritual medicine, they still had 300 to 400 points. The highest number even had more than 500 points. If everyone only contributed 100 points, there wouldn't be any substantial loss. The reason was very simple. Now that things had developed to this stage, Lin Yi's group definitely had the upper hand. Even if there were two uncertain factors, Meng Tong and Li Jingming, to everyone present, there was no need to think about the top three. The best result was to fight for the top 10. That way, they would at least be able to obtain 3 spiritual jades as consolation. And Lin Yi's setting of a limit of 100 points happened to scratch the itch of everyone. This was because in the trial rules, there was a supplementary rule that didn't attract much attention. Chapter 3680. After all, for the 3 pavilions, the newcomer trial was held to a large extent for the newcomers to collect elixirs. But if the final number of elixirs collected was only a little, or even not enough to take out, then the rewards would be too high to make ends meet. That would be a joke. And because the average score of each trial could reach around 500 points, the threshold of 200 points was basically ignored. But because of the special circumstances of this trial, it came in handy. If Lin Yi asked for more, then the final result would be that even if these newcomers were to rank in the top 10, they would not have enough points to reach the 200 points, and thus miss out on the rewards. And the 100 points that Lin Yi asked for just happened to take into account this point. Even if everyone present contributed 100 points, they would still have at least 200 points left, and the final reward would not be lacking. For them, this way, there wouldn't be too obvious a loss. After all, in the fight for the top 10, they were competitors with each other. It didn't matter how many points Lin Yi and the others had. As long as they could ensure that they were above the basic points and that they could still compete fairly with each other, then Lin Yi could get as many points as he wanted. There was no need to take the risk of falling out with Lin Yi. After all, this group of people weren't really soft persimmons. No matter what, they were still experts at the great perfection of Heaven's stage. Although the situation was now completely under Lin Yi's control, once it involved key interests, if he bullied them too much and someone with ulterior motives fanned the flames, it was likely to cause a strong backlash. And although Lin Yi was powerful, he was only one person in the end. Once this group of people became chaotic, it would be very difficult to perfectly control the situation like now. Lin Yi had already calculated in his heart. By collecting 100 points from everyone as a punishment, he could ensure his own interests, and he would not completely become enemies with all the rookies. After all, these people were only temporarily relying on Meng Jueguang for benefits. Their loyalty was not high. If he bullied them too much this time, Meng Jueguang would be the fisherman who reaped the benefits, and these people would become his sworn enemy. Lin Yi would not do such a stupid thing. Soon, these rookies nimbly handed over 100 points worth of elixirs before looking nervously at Lin Yi. He was afraid that Lin Yi would go back on his word. Some people had even thought about it. Once Lin Yi went back on his word, they would immediately escape like Meng Tong and Li Jingming. There would always be a chance in the chaos. And if Lin Yi was in a dilemma, it would be even better. They could even find a chance to snatch it back. But Lin Yi wasn't as greedy as these people thought he was. He ordered some of the herbs. After counting a few elixirs, he waved his hand to let these people leave. Everyone felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they hurriedly left. Because Lin Yi had let them go, their gazes towards Lin Yi weren't as hostile as they had imagined. At least, they did not feel too much hatred. Instead, Meng Tong, who was the first to escape, became the target of contempt in their hearts. These elixirs, the two of you will each take half. Lin Yi turned his head to look at Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. The two of them were stunned. Half each. That way, Xiao Ran would be able to reach 1,000 points. Even Xiao Honkai, who had nothing, would not be able to win. He could also get 500 points. I've calculated it. This way, at least two of us can enter the top 3. In other words, getting 2 building foundation dawn is not a problem. 1 for each of you is enough. Lin Yi said with a smile. He himself was an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, so he naturally had no use for foundation establishment pills. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were stunned for a while. Looking at the shocking 1,800 points behind Lin Yi, they finally digested the meaning of Lin Yi's words. They did not know what to say and could only nod blankly. The final points of the 3 were Lin Yi was 1,800, Xiao Ran was 1,000, and Xiao Honkai was 500, under the premise that the other newcomers had already lost 100 points, even if Meng Tong and Li Jingming were 2 unknown factors. According to normal circumstances, this kind of result should be enough to lock them into the top 3. As for Xiao Honkai, although she could not make into the top 3, she would definitely be in the top 5 and would not be any worse than this. Following Lin Yi's instructions, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai could not help but ask as they divided the spiritual herbs. Boss Lin Yi, when did you break through to the early stage of the foundation establishment realm? Why didn't we notice any signs at all? I had already broken through when I was still in the secular world. It would be strange if you could notice any signs at all. It happened not too long ago. Lin Yi could only answer vaguely. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai looked at each other, their eyes filled with even more admiration. They turned and pointed at the shocking points on Lin Yi's basket and asked curiously, "Then what's with the 1,800 points? Boss Lin Yi, you couldn't have encountered some kind of peerless spiritual herb that is worth 1,000 points, right?" This was a very normal speculation. According to the average standard of 500 points, to be able to reach 800 points was already very rare. As for 1,800 points, unless it was a pie falling from the sky and 1,000 points falling from the sky, they really could not think of a more reasonable speculation. You already know that I'm a pill master, so it's not strange for me to have some tricks up my sleeve when it comes to gathering spiritual herbs, right? Lin Yi laughed non-committally. Even if the two of them were his little brothers, the secret of the Skybolt pig was related to the space in the jade pendant, so he could not easily say it out loud. That's true. Xiao Ran had long heard of Lin Yi's achievements when he was still in the secular world, and Xiao Honkai had also heard of him from her bitter senior brother, so they both knew that he was a pill master. As in pill master, it was normal for him to have his own unique methods and experience in gathering spiritual herbs. In comparison, they were all amateurs, so they could only feel that it was amazing. Seeing that it was almost time, Lin Yi and the other two did not delay any longer and directly returned to the back mountain hall according to the map. At this moment, the other newcomers had already returned a step earlier. Other than Lin Yi and the other two, only Meng Tong and Li Zhongming had not arrived. After a while, when it was noon, Meng Tong and Li Zhongming finally arrived. Chapter 3681. For a moment, the gazes of everyone present at Meng Tong began to become strange. He was obviously so terrified just now. So where did this guy get his confidence from? However, when Meng Tong flaunted his basket in front of everyone suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. A full 1,600 points. Fuck. Everyone could not stay calm. Even if the 500 points that were snatched from Xiao Honkai were all in this guy's pocket, it also meant that Meng Tong's points alone had reached 1,100 points. That was too much. One had to know that Meng Tong was the same as them. He only needed 1.5 days to collect the elixirs. To be able to obtain 1,100 points in just 1.5 days, what kind of concept was that? Could it be that this guy was really hiding his strength? Was it just that he didn't look presentable? Not only the crowd, but even Lin Yi was slightly stunned when he saw the points. However, he quickly regained his composure and his lips curled into a faint smile. As for Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, they looked at Meng Tong's smug face and could not help but laugh. Up until now, because they were afraid of Lin Yi, no one had the time to carefully observe Lin Yi's points. As for Meng Tong, who turned and ran away the moment he appeared, he did not even know what Lin Yi's basket looked like. He thought that the idiot Lin Yi would at most be able to obtain 500 to 600 points. Originally, he was worried that Lin Yi would snatch the points of the other newcomers and surpass him. However, when he heard that Lin Yi was only taking 100 points from each person, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Only 100 points per person. In other words, you can only get 1,000 points at most. According to your pretentious behavior, you'll probably have to give some points to those two good-for-nothings. In addition to your original points, you can only get 1,000 points at most. Hee, acting tough newbie. This time, you've really failed to act tough and turned into an idiot. Meng Tong chattered on smugly. As for the other rookies, they looked at Lin Yi with ridicule in their eyes. Although Lin Yi did not do anything ruthless to them, he still made them pay 100 points. They were very happy to see Lin Yi suffer. Really? Let's wait and see. Lin Yi smiled faintly. After giving Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai a look, the two of them deliberately covered his basket even more tightly. Since Meng Tong was so smug, then let him be smug for a while longer. Surprises should always be left to the end. A dead duck is still stubborn. Seeing that Lin Yi did not refute, Meng Tong was even more smug. He was able to obtain so many points this time. Other than snatching them from Xiao Honkai, the most important thing was that Meng Jueguang had given him a cheating device, a wood attribute sensor. This wood attribute sensor could automatically sense all the spiritual herbs within 100 meters and point out the direction. It was simply a godly tool for harvesting spiritual herbs. In contrast, people like Lin Yi who relied completely on observation to harvest spiritual herbs. That was simply the behavior of a weakling. It cannot be compared at all. What Meng Tong did not know was that in this world, there was a spiritual beast called the Sky Thunder Pig, and its ability was at least 10 times that of a wood attribute sensor. As they spoke, it was already noon. Just like before the trial began, the rookies were still waiting quietly in the square of the back mountain. The 3 elders that he had seen before were still sitting on the 3 spacious outdoor chairs. They looked as dignified and magnificent as ever, giving off the feeling that they had not moved at all in the past 3 days. Apart from the welcoming pavilion's pavilion master Hu Yunfeng and a few senior stewards, What made Linny surprised was that there were actually two more people. And these two people were not unfamiliar to him. These two people, one was Su Lingchong, the other was a young lady that he had met once before, Shanghai Laner. Seeing that he had appeared among the rookies. The little curly bear that was hanging on Shanghai Laner's body immediately whimpered in excitement. If not for Shanghai Laner holding it back, it would probably have struggled to run to Lin Yi's side. Hey, you heartless Xiaobai, what kind of soup did that guy feed you? You've never been so attentive to me since I was a child. Shang Wanlan complained angrily with a pout. The back mountain hall was one of the most remote places in the three pavilions. If there was no special reason, she would not be willing to come all the way here. The reason why she came this time was purely because of the little curly bear's coquettish behavior. Just because she had heard Su Lingchong casually mention the Welcome Pavilion's newcomers trial when she was chatting with the other young masters and young ladies, the little curly bear seemed to have been possessed and insisted on pestering her to join in on the fun no matter what. In the end, Shanghai Laner had no choice but to comply with its wishes. Otherwise, this little guy would really turn the house upside down. Originally, Shanghai Laner was a little puzzled by this matter. She thought that the little curly bear just wanted to sneak to the back mountain to play. But now that she saw its behavior, her heart was like a mirror. The little guy came all the way here just to see Lin Yi. For more than 10 years, the little guy was even more attentive to Lin Yi, who had only played with it for a few hours. How could this be tolerated? For a moment, Shanghai Laner's gaze towards Lin Yi was filled with sour resentment. After noticing this, Lin Yi inexplicably shrugged his shoulders. Up until now, he still didn't know the background of this young girl, but from the respectful and reverent expressions Su Lingchong and the others showed towards her, this young girl's background should be very deep. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Hu Yunfeng asked the three elders for instructions. Then, he cleared his throat and announced, "Everyone, please be quiet. We will now begin the registration of the newcomer trial points and determine the final ranking." As soon as he finished speaking, the 6 senior stewards of the welcoming pavilion entered their respective rookie camps and began to announce the points one by one. As for the 3 high and mighty elders, they naturally did not need to intervene in such trivial matters. They only needed to ensure that it was fair and that no one would secretly mess with the reputation of the back mountain hall. This process was not carried out by the 3 pavilions at the same time, but there was an order. Rushing Sky Pavilion was first, followed by Mysterious Pavilion, and as for Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was naturally ranked last. Chapter 3682. Kong Mingming's strength wasn't that great, but Lin Yi wasn't surprised that he was able to obtain such a high ranking in a competition like this. After all, Kong Mingming was an elixir refiner, and he was more sensitive to wood elemental herbs than others. Moreover, with Su Lingchong's help, it would be hard for him not to obtain first place. Of course, this had nothing to do with Lin Yi, but Lin Yi was rather gratified that Zhong Pingliang was able to enter the top 3. After Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion were done, it was finally Blue Cloud Pavilion's turn. However, after 4 or 5 people reported their scores, all of them hovered around 200 to 300 points, completely incomparable to the scores of the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions. The 3 elders' faces, which were originally quite satisfied, immediately darkened. The newcomers from Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion laughed without restraint, and the bald elder, sitting in the middle, frowned. Have all the newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion fallen to such a state? Rottenwood really can be carved. It seems like I should make a suggestion to the Elder Council that Blue Cloud Pavilion doesn't need to recruit newcomers in the future. It's purely a waste of resources. The 2 elders beside him nodded in agreement. No matter what, 4 or 5 people only had 200 to 300 points in a row. This kind of result was really terrible, and according to this trend, it was almost certain that they would break the average score record. However, other people were aiming for the upper limit, while this group of useless newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion were aiming for the lower limit. Although the scores of the people after that were slightly better, They only hovered around 300 to 400 points, still incomparable to the results of the newcomers from Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion. It wasn't until Meng Jueguang reported Meng Tong's score that the entire audience was shocked. Meng Tong, 1,600 points. 1,600 points. What kind of concept was this? One had to know that even the highest score of the newcomers from the previous two pavilions was only a little over 1,200 points. This score was a whole lot higher than the previous one. The rookies from the other two pavilions were immediately in an uproar. Even the three elders sitting there were slightly taken aback. Moments later, the bald elder nodded and said, "This rookie is not bad. He is very competitive. He must have snatched quite a number of points from the other rookies. It could be considered as a fig leaf for Blue Cloud Pavilion." Hearing the bald elder's praise, Meng Tong couldn't help but raise his chin proudly at Lin Yi, who was at the end of the line. His provocation was obvious. Lin Yi pursed his lips with a faint smile. Non-committal. And after Meng Tong's stunning performance, the other rookies once again recovered to the standard of 300 to 400 points. While they were mocked, it only served to accentuate how rare Meng Tong was. Just as the bald-headed elder had said, this newcomer was very competitive. Among the group of trash newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Xiao Ran, 1,023 points. After seeing Xiao Ran's points, the bitter senior brother was clearly overjoyed. This result was much better than what he expected, where they would all be wiped out. As for Meng Jueguang, he was somewhat stunned. After he reacted, he immediately stared at Meng Tong in dissatisfaction. It had to be known that he had done all this to silence Lin Yi and company in the trial. He had spent a lot of effort. Not only did he prepare a wood elemental sensor for Meng Tong to ensure first place, he had also specially mobilized the rookies so that they would listen to Meng Tong's instructions in the trial. Logically speaking, with Meng Tong leading so many people to deal with Lin Yi and company, there shouldn't be any major problems. It should have been a simple matter to silence Lin Yi and company perfectly. But now, the most critical Lin Yi had not even had his turn. On Xiao Ran's side, he had already burst out with more than 1,000 points. He had booked a spot in the top 3 in advance. You can't even do such a simple thing. What a piece of trash. Meng Jueguang turned his head and cursed softly. Ninth cousin, you really can't blame me for this. There's really a reason for this. I'll explain it to you in detail later. Meng Tong scratched his head awkwardly as he tried to explain. There's a reason for this? I want to hear what kind of excuse you are using, kid. Meng Jueguang did not believe that with such a huge difference in strength, there was any reason that could explain his failure. However, it was not convenient to speak in this situation. He could only let Meng Tong off for the time being. After this, he would settle the score with this fellow who could not do anything but spoil things. Xiao Hongkai, 500 points. Meng Jueguang's face turned even uglier. Although 500 points was not considered high, with so many new disciples in the Clear Cloud Pavilion, the average score was around 300 to 400 points. It was considered a rare high score. He no longer held any hope of silencing Lin Yi and company. The only thing he was thankful for was that he had prepared a wood-type sensor for Meng Tong. At least, he would not lose first place. After all, a high score of 1,600 points was impossible for ordinary rookies to achieve unless they plunder from other rookies or simply cheat. However, when it was finally Lin Yi's turn, Meng Jueguang was dumbfounded when he saw the numbers displayed on the basket. He could not react for a long time. "Oh, Jueguang, what are you doing there? Hurry up and report it." Hu Yinfeng glared at Meng Jueguang in dissatisfaction. Lin Yi was the last one. Everyone, including the 3 elders, was waiting. "Oh, okay." Meng Jueguang snapped out of his daze and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. When he realized that it was still the same number, he reported in disbelief, Lin Yi 1,800 points. 1,800 points. The audience instantly went crazy. Meng Tong's 1,600 points had already shocked them. They never expected that there would be an even more impressive result. Holy shit, how is that possible? Meng Tong, who was confident in his victory, was immediately dumbfounded. He was already prepared to celebrate first place. Lin Yi, that idiot, had clearly given a total of 1,000 points to Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. How could he still have 1,800 points? Ninth cousin must have seen wrongly. It should have been 800 points. However, when he rushed over to take a look, it clearly showed that it was 1,800 points. This must be because the basket is spoiled, right? Meng Tong stammered as he said, to the similarly incredulous Meng Juiguang. The 1,000 points that Lin Yi had snatched had all been given to Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. That was to say, the remaining points were all gathered by him personally. After all, Lin Yi was not like Meng Tong, who had a cheating device like the wood elemental sensor. How could he gather a terrifying number like 1,800 points by himself? There was only one possible explanation. It had to be that the basket was spoiled. Chapter 3683. Hu Yinfeng glanced at the three elders. Seeing that the three elders had no objections, she nodded and asked the Back Mountain Hall's specialized pharmacist to come over and examine it in public. Don't forget that Su Lingchong was still standing by his side. This fellow, Lin Yi, was a thorn that openly provoked young Master Su. Even if it was for the sake of currying favor with young Master Su, he absolutely didn't wish for Lin Yi to be able to obtain any good rankings, let alone obtain a shockingly high score of 1,800 points that was sufficient to break the record. The pharmacist took over Lin Yi's basket and took out the spirit herbs one by one to calculate the points. The surrounding people didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. They all had complicated expressions on their faces as their gazes wandered back and forth between Lin Yi and the spirit herbs on the ground. There won't be any problems, right? The bitter senior brother stood nervously next to Lin Yi. Compared to the calm and composed Lin Yi, the bystander was uneasy. It was as if the emperor was not anxious, but the eunuch was anxious. On one hand, he sincerely hoped that Lin Yi's score was real. This way, not only would he be able to obtain the all-important building foundation pill as a reward, he would also be able to ruthlessly suppress the arrogance of Meng Juiguang's group. But on the other hand, reason told him that this score was really too exaggerated, and it was unlikely to be real. As there was not much of a difference in strength between the rookies, and there was not enough time, even in the most intense competition in the past years, there had never been a precedent of a person reaching the height of 1,800 points. The reason was simple. Even if one's strength was higher than the rookies of the same batch, once one of them successfully snatched the points of the other two rookies, they would immediately become the target of public criticism. It was almost impossible to maintain this until the end of the trial and retreat unscathed. Unless this person's strength was so strong that even if the others joined forces, they would not dare to be enemies with him. Although senior brother Ku Bai was very confident in Lin Yi's strength, he was not blind to this extent. After all, as far as he knew, Lin Yi was only at the peak of heaven stage, and not an early-stage foundation establishment expert who was above all the newcomers. In the face of the bitter senior brother's question, Lin Yi just smiled faintly. Don't worry, there won't be a problem. Time passed bit by bit. Although Lin Yi's basket contained a lot of spiritual herbs, it was not enough. However, the examiner quickly came to a conclusion. Reporting to the three elders, this newcomer Lin Yi's points are 1,800. It is confirmed. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. Everyone looked at Lin Yi with shock, as if they had seen a ghost. Meng Juiguang and Meng Tong were even more despondent after hearing this. This pharmacist was a neutral member of the Back Mountain Hall. His words were equivalent to the words of the three elders present. Even if the two of them had 10 times the courage, they would not dare to have the slightest objection at this moment. Ninth cousin brother, what should we do now? Meng Tong asked in a low voice, still unwilling to give up. If the points were to be announced now, then the final result would be Lin Yi first, Meng Tong second, and Xiao Ran third. Although it was said that as long as one was in the top 3, they would receive a Foundation Establishment pill as a reward. But don't forget that the first place would receive an additional 10 pieces of spiritual jades, which was equivalent to 3 months' worth of work in the mining area. It was obviously something that was in his pocket. So how could he let it slip by so easily? Moreover, the first place was an honor. The top 10 disciples would all be recorded, and entering the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future would also be an honor. Meng Jiuguang looked awkwardly at the 3 elders who were sitting up there. If it was only inside the welcoming pavilion, he might have a way to trick Hu Yinfeng, but this was the back mountain hall. If he dared to do anything under the watchful eyes of the crowd, then the 3 elders would probably kill him on the spot. After all, these 3 elders did not know who Meng Jiuguang was, and they would not be gossiped about because of such a small character. If this newcomer trial, under their supervision, was still said to be unfair, then their 3 old faces would be embarrassed. Under the eyes of the 3 elders, it was not good to play tricks, but if they just watched as Lin Yi took first place, not to mention Meng Tong, even Meng Jiuguang himself would not be able to swallow this resentment. Time waited for no man. Since the pharmacist had already confirmed Lin Yi's points, then the final ranking had already been announced. However, just as Yinfeng was about to brace himself and announce it in front of everyone, Su Lingqiong, who was beside him, gave him a look. What orders does young Master Su have? Hu Yinfeng hurriedly nodded and bowed. Su Lingqiong looked at him and said expressionlessly, I don't care what method you use, but Lin Yi absolutely cannot get first place. Otherwise, how would I have the face to stand in front of so many newcomers? Hu Yinfeng didn't know what to do. He looked at the 3 elders who weren't far from him. He might be the leader of the welcoming pavilion, but he was nothing in the back mountain palace. If he dared to go against Lin Yi in public, he'd be kicked out of his position as the leader of the welcoming pavilion the very next moment. But Su Lingqiong's grandfather, Su Yuanzheng, was his most important backer. If he offended this young Master Su, then his ending would not be any better. Just as Hu Yinfeng was in a dilemma, Meng Jiuguang suddenly jogged up to him and Su Lingqiong and whispered, Young Master Su, Pavilion Master, I have a way to prevent Lin Yi from getting first place. Hu Yinfeng was immediately delighted as he hurriedly said, What good idea do you have? Quickly tell me. Now that things have come to this, Lin Yi's points have already been sealed. It is already very difficult for us to suppress him. However, this does not mean that he will naturally get first place. As long as we create a score that is higher than his, then wouldn't we be able to surpass him? Meng Jiuguang suggested. Su Lingqiong and Hu Yinfeng looked at each other. Hu Yinfeng said with a look of doubt, Create a score that is higher than his? Is that feasible? Lin Yi has a total of 1,800 points, and all the other rookies have already reported their scores. There's no way to change it, right? 1,800 points is indeed very high, but Meng Tong's 1,600 points isn't much lower. As long as we find a rookie to voluntarily contribute 200 points to Meng Tong, wouldn't we be able to surpass Lin Yi? Meng Jiuguang said carefully. With his current influence among the rookies, it was not difficult to achieve this. Su Lingqiong was somewhat tempted when he heard this. As long as he did not let the blind fellow, Lin Yi, have the last laugh, he did not care who obtained first place. Chapter 3684. Meng Jiuguang nodded his head and said, Pavilion Master, if you were the only one here to face the 3 elders of the back mountain hall, it would indeed be very difficult for us to succeed. But isn't young Master Su here today? The back mountain hall elders are also people. Don't tell me they won't give young Master Su this little bit of face? Su Lingqiong immediately smiled. Perhaps he didn't have the ability to make the 3 elders present publicly distort the truth, but if it was just to make them turn a blind eye to such a small matter, then it wouldn't be a problem at all. No matter what, his grandfather, Su Yuanzheng, was a big shot who occupied a seat in the Elders' Council. Even the 3 back mountain hall elders present had to give him face. As for whether the 3 elders would cooperate, this was actually very obvious. After all, even if Su Lingqiong and company spoke softly with the strength of the 3 elders, there was no way they could hide from their senses. And from the beginning to the end, they didn't open their mouths to stop them. They didn't even say a word. This in itself already represented their tacit agreement. After obtaining the approval of Su Lingchong and Hu Yinfeng, Meng Jueguang immediately turned around and returned to the newcomers. He inadvertently glanced at Lin Yi's direction, but the situation in front of him gave him a huge shock. Just as he and Su Lingchong were plotting, the young lady of Laner actually lowered her status and took the initiative to look for Lin Yi. It must be known that she wasn't just a simple beauty with unparalleled beauty. More importantly, she was the granddaughter of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua. To be able to make this young lady, who was as noble as a princess, take the initiative to strike up a conversation, Lin Yi, this country bumpkin of the secular world, must have accumulated the good fortune of several lifetimes. Not only Meng Jueguang, the other newcomers present were also looking at Lin Yi with the same gaze. Each and every one of them were envious, jealous, and even wanted to use their gazes to kill him, and then replace him. Even young Master Su Lingchong's expression changed when he saw this scene. It should be known that he was one of the many pursuers of Shangwan Laner. His grandfather, Su Yuanzheng, had warned him more than once that if he wanted to rise in the Soaring Sky Pavilion in the future, he must hold onto the thigh of Shangwan Tianhua, and pursuing Shanghai Laner was the best way to do so. It was related to the future of the Su family. There was no room for error on this point. Therefore, in recent years, he, young Master Su, had spent countless efforts to capture the heart of the young girl. In the end, Shangwan Laner had always ignored him. Unexpectedly, today, she had taken the initiative to strike up a conversation with Lin Yi, this country bumpkin of the secular world. How could he endure this? This feeling was like a tall, rich, and handsome man being defeated by a poor man. Little did he know that Shanghai Laner had never thought of taking the initiative to strike up a conversation with Lin Yi. She was completely forced to strike up a conversation. The one who wholeheartedly wanted to get close to Lin Yi was obviously the little curly bear, who was hanging on her back, but couldn't wait to burrow into Lin Yi's arms. This little bastard who betrays me while secretly helping others. Shanghai Laner secretly cursed. However, under the little curly bear's coquettish attack, she couldn't bear to ignore it. She could only grit her teeth and bear the strange gazes of the audience. Fortunately, Lin Yi wasn't as annoying as she'd imagined. If it was someone else, they would definitely be like Su Lingchong and the others, asking all sorts of questions in order to get close to her. However, Lin Yi didn't have the intention to climb up the stick. He just greeted her with a normal expression and didn't say anything more. However, in this way, on the contrary, Shanghai Laner, who was used to being surrounded by stars, had a strange feeling. What did this Lin Yi mean? Could it be that she wasn't attractive in his eyes? After noticing the strange resentment in Shangwan Lan Er's eyes, Zhang Xian was stunned. Lin Yi was completely baffled. From the beginning to the end, he didn't offend this Missy at all. However, Lin Yi didn't have the mood to care about this Missy's subtle state of mind. From Meng Jueguang's strange actions just now, he had already felt a trace of a conspiracy. And now, Hu Yinfeng finally planned to announce the final rankings. Before announcing the final trial results of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, due to the trial process, a portion of Meng Tong's elixir was temporarily deposited in Li Zhongming's basket. Therefore, the points of this portion of elixir will need to be recalculated. I can only ask the Back Mountain Hall's pharmacist to work hard again. Hu Yunfeng's expression didn't change as she spoke eloquently. The newcomers in front had already finished announcing the scores, so it couldn't be changed. However, Li Zhongming's score had yet to be announced. Furthermore, from Meng Jueguang's point of view, Li Zhongming was closer and easier to cooperate with. The newcomers from the three pavilions were immediately in an uproar. Although Hu Yunfeng's words were high-sounding, anyone with a discerning eye knew that it was cheating. However, even the three elders turned a blind eye to it. The newcomers naturally wouldn't take the risk of offending Su Lingchong and Hu Yunfeng to question it. After all, it had nothing to do with them, so they didn't care. Holy shit, this is too shameless. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai couldn't help but be infuriated. This shameless move was clearly targeted at Lin Yi. Senior Brother Bitter could not help but protest, but he was stopped by Lin Yi. Although the opponent's method was shameless and despicable, the fact that the three elders did not say a word was already a clear indication of the problem. They were all alone, so if they were to protest in such a situation, it would put these important figures on the spot. Then things would be difficult to deal with in the future. However, Lin Yi did not plan on giving up the first place of the trial so easily. He wanted to see what other tricks the opponent had up his sleeve. The apothecary quickly gave the result. Meng Tong's final score, 1,800 points. The moment this was said, everyone was stunned. 1,800 points, not a single point less or less. It happened to be tied with Lin Yi's score. Not only did the crowd not expect this scene, even Meng Jueguang and the others did not expect this at all. He had specifically asked Li Jingming to take out more than 200 points worth of elixirs. In the end, he did not expect this guy to be so stingy and take out exactly 200 points, not a single point more. Are you crazy, kid? Would it kill you to give me one more point? Now I'm tied with that bastard Lin Yi. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Meng Tong couldn't help but curse in exasperation. This opportunity to turn defeat into victory was something that Meng Jueguang had fought so hard for. If all his efforts were to go down the drain because of Li Zhongming's stinginess, then it would really be a big joke. Hearing Meng Tong's words, Li Zhongming's face instantly turned extremely gloomy. Motherfucker, I've already contributed 200 points to you for free. Not only did you not say a word of thanks, but you're also cursing at me. How can you be so cheap? Chapter 3685. Even Meng Jueguang couldn't bear to watch Meng Tong's stupidity any longer. After gesturing for him to shut up, Meng Jueguang turned to Li Jingming and said in a low voice, Zhongming, why don't you take out some more spiritual herbs before the final announcement of the rankings? After all, if we have the same number of points, it won't be easy. Li Zhongming gritted his teeth and looked at Meng Jueguang. He said in a low voice, Senior Meng, I have 320 points right now and am ranked 10th. If I take out another spiritual herb, then I will fall out of the top 10. Li Jingming didn't have too bad of a medicinal herb in his possession. The lowest points he had were 2 points, and the 11th ranked person had 319 points. Even if he took out the lowest point medicinal herb, he would still be ranked 11th. Meng Jueguang was slightly surprised and said, You want the reward for the top 10? No problem. As long as Meng Tong gets first place, I will have him compensate you with 5 pieces of spiritual jades. This is much more generous than the 3 pieces of spiritual jades you get for the top 10, right? Unexpectedly, Li Zhongming was not moved at all. He shook his head and said, Senior Meng, you misunderstand. I'm not greedy for this little bit of spiritual jades. I just don't want to fall out of the top 10. In all the official competitions of the Welcoming Pavilion, whether it is the newcomer's trial or the ranking competition, as long as you fall out of the top 10, it will leave an indelible stain on your resume. Once you carry this stain, it means that you're lacking in at least one aspect. Even if you enter the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future, you won't be valued and will only be reduced to a marginal character. These words were personally said by you, Senior Meng. With this, Meng Jueguang was immediately speechless. These words that Li Zhongming said were indeed taught by him, and they were the truth. It was just that he didn't think that these words would have such an effect at a time like this. And it was even counterproductive. In that case, if it was just to let Meng Tong take first place over Lin Yi and force Li Zhongming out of the top 10, it was indeed a little unreasonable. No matter what, Li Jingming was the first newcomer besides Meng Tong to rely on him. It was not a good thing for him to cheat his own people. If word of this got out, it would probably disturb people's morale. However, with the situation having developed to this point, he could not use the same trick again. He could not possibly say that Meng Tong had left some elixirs with other rookies, right? That would simply be an insult to the intelligence of everyone present. Perhaps even the 3 elders would not continue to acquiesce. Now that things had come to this, They could only let young Master Su think of a way to exert some influence. Fortunately, although Meng Tong's current score was not higher than Lin Yi's, it was not lower either. It should be easier to manipulate. Meng Jueguang explained the situation to Su Lingchong and Hu Yunfeng in detail. Although Su Lingchong was a little dissatisfied that this guy couldn't even do such a small thing properly. Although Su Lingchong was a little dissatisfied that this guy couldn't even handle such a small matter, he could only nod with a gloomy face in order to prevent Lin Yi from taking first place. After all, at this time, other than him personally appearing, the others, including Hu Yunfeng, were too low-level. There was no way they could directly talk to the three elders, and it was even more impossible for them to do them a favor. Su Lingchong rushed over and said a few words to the bald elder sitting in the middle. Then he nodded to Hu Yunfeng and Meng Jueguang. The matter was settled. Hu Yunfeng were instantly overjoyed. They secretly praised young Master Su in their hearts. No matter where he went, he was popular. Even the elders of the back mountain hall had to give him face. However, the two of them were really thinking too much. Although young Master Su's face was not small, it was definitely not to the point where even the elders would have to give him a favor. The reason why he was able to settle it so smoothly this time, it was entirely because this bald elder had a good personal relationship with his grandfather, Su Yuanzheng. Otherwise, even he, young Master Su, would not even be able to say a word to him. In the three great pavilions, regardless of whether one entered the Elders' Guild or not, any elder was a big shot. Ordinary disciples could only tremble in fear in front of them. This was a rule that even someone with a powerful background like young Master Su could not easily overstep. Of course, if it was an elder who had a good relationship with his grandfather, then it would be a different story. After receiving Su Lingchong's signal, Hu Yunfeng cleared his throat and said in a clear voice, "Now that the final score is out, Meng Tong has 1,800 points and Lin Yi has 1,800 points. Both of them are tied for first place. But according to the rules of the previous rookie trials, there has never been such a thing as a tie. If the two people end up with the same number of points, then the elders stationed at the back mountain hall will determine the winner based on their performance in the trial." These three elders were actually able to observe everyone's behavior and performance during the trial. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat, but after thinking about it, he understood. Since Hu Yunfeng said this in front of everyone, it shouldn't be nonsense, so it was clear that there was something going on. With the powerful strength of these three elders, if they were to cooperate with the various restrictions and arrays in the back mountain, it shouldn't be too difficult to monitor the situation in the back mountain. After all, their main task was to protect the back mountain. If they couldn't even do the most basic monitoring, how could they protect it? However, Lin Yi believed that even if it was monitoring, it definitely wouldn't be too detailed. At most, they would only pay attention to a few places with relatively large movements. After all, the back mountain was so big. If they really paid attention to every place, then not to mention the three elders, even if there were 30 or 300 people, they would only be exhausted to death. This made Lin Yi secretly keep an eye out. If he were to enter the back mountain in the future, he had to be careful when he did something big. If not, he didn't know when his secret would be discovered by others, and that would be troublesome. Under Hu Yunfeng's request, the people involved, Lin Yi and Meng Tong, walked to an empty space in front so that the elders could recall their performance during the trial. Everyone held their breaths and waited. The bald elder in the middle, who had the most authority to speak, carefully examined the two of them. Just as he was about to announce the results, there was a sudden commotion from the rookies below. Then a little guy with black and white clothes jumped out from the crowd and jumped onto Lin Yi's back. The bald elder's eyebrows twitched. Just as he was about to reprimand him, the pretty figure that followed made him swallow the scolding he was about to say. There was no other reason. The girl's background was so deep that even he was frightened. Chapter 3686. Little White, come back. They're doing something serious. Shanghai Laner quickly tried to pull the little curly bear back, but it refused to let go of Lin Yi. No matter what she said, it refused to come down from Lin E. Woo 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 woo. Not only did it refuse to come down, but the little curly bear kept calling out, as if it wanted to express something. Shanghai Laner was stunned. Others might not understand the little curly bear's whining, but she grew up with it. She didn't dare to say that she understood 100% of the little curly bear's meaning, but it wasn't a problem for her to understand 80%. Are you saying that you want Lin Yi to get first place, and that Meng Tong is a bad guy? Shanghai Laner frowned and asked. Her suspicious eyes then fell on Meng Tong. With the little curly bear's closeness to Lin Yi, it was easy to understand that it wanted Lin Yi to get first place, but it was a bit strange to say that Meng Tong was a bad guy because of this. One had to know that the little curly bear wasn't as organic as humans. It always said what it said, and it would never deliberately belittle Meng Tong just to let Lin Yi get first place. It must have its reasons for saying so. Looking at Shanghai Laner's meaningful gaze falling on him, Meng Tong instantly broke out in a cold sweat. The only thought in his mind at the moment was, damn, could it be that the truth has been exposed, and this little thing has recalled the situation that day? This was not impossible. Although the little curly bear was still in its infancy, its intelligence was comparable to that of a human child. At this time, it was not strange for it to recall the incident that day. You tell me, what did you do to my little white? Little white would never slander you without any reason. This was related to the little curly bear. Shanghai Laner's expression suddenly became serious, and she stared at Meng Tong and questioned, although she didn't always like to think. But that didn't mean she didn't know how to use her brain. Now that she thought about it, the situation of looking for the little curly bear was indeed a little strange. At least, what Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong said must have been false. However, it was already late at that time, and they had successfully found the little curly bear, so she did not care about it. And no, Meng Tong hurriedly stammered in denial. If the matter of that day was dug out, then his ending would be very ugly. No. Shangwan Laner looked at him suspiciously. He then turned to the little curly bear. Little white, why did you say that this guy's a bad guy? Did he do anything bad to you? Woo 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 woo. The little curly bear made a series of gestures with his hands and feet, and he specially pointed at Meng Tong a few times. Meng Tong's heart was in his throat for a moment. Even Meng Jueguang, who was standing not far away, saw this scene and was also scared to the point that he was drenched in cold sweat. He was afraid that the case would be solved in public. That would really be a big problem. As for Linny, he looked at all of this calmly and coldly. If the little curly bear could really recall the specific situation of that day, then Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong would definitely be doomed. This would save him a lot of trouble. Shanghai Laner pondered for a long time before she understood the meaning of the little curly bear. She said helplessly, Little White, you are saying that Meng Tong's breath is very annoying. It seems like he kicked you in your dream. Is he not a good person? Woo-woo. The little curly bear nodded repeatedly. Holy shit. It turned out that this little thing didn't even think about it. It was just instinctively annoyed. Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief, but they were still afraid. Spirit beasts like the curly roll bear. Its perception was much more sensitive than ordinary people, even if it did not have a clear memory. But subconsciously, he would still be on guard against things that had hurt him. However, as long as it didn't clearly recall the situation that day, everything would be fine. After all, even a young lady like Shangwan Laner wouldn't directly come forward to deal with the two of them just because of a baseless accusation and a pet's hobby. All right, I'm fine. You guys can continue. Shangwan Laner rolled her eyes at the little fellow. Just as Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong thought, she was the granddaughter of Shangwan Tianhua. In such a public occasion, she had to consider Shangwan Tianhua's image in every word and action. She couldn't just accompany the little fellow and throw a tantrum. The bald elder nodded and was about to announce the result. Unexpectedly, Shanghai Laner pouted at Meng Tong and said, Although I don't have any grudges with you, since even Little White hates you so much, it means that you're really not a good person. Oomph. Meng Tong suddenly wanted to cry, but had no tears. He was still rejoicing that he had escaped a calamity. In the end, he was immediately blacklisted by this young lady. Everything was really unfavorable for him today. But fortunately, the abuse of the little curly bear that day was not solved on the spot. To him, this was already a blessing in disguise. Moreover, he was able to obtain first place in the trial today. At least he could comfort himself. However, what the bald elder said next almost made him spit out a mouthful of blood. In this trial, although the points of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers Meng Tong and Lin Yi are the same, looking at the whole process of the trial, Meng Tong incited the other newcomers to besiege Lin Yi. He was opportunistic and had a bad character. Therefore, I believe that the first place in this Blue Cloud Pavilion trial belongs to Lin Yi. Do you have any objections? What the hell? The first place belongs to Lin. From Su Lingxiong and Hu Yinfeng to Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong, everyone was dumbfounded. It was clearly said that Meng Tong would be first. That wasn't how the script was written? No objections. The two elders at the side nodded. As for the others, even if they had any objections, they did not have the slightest right to speak. Not even Su Lingxiong, young Master Su. Then that's it. The bald elder's last sentence directly sealed the coffin of this newcomer trial. What the hell? Su Lingxiong and the others were dumbfounded. This sudden change in the situation was too sudden. Su Lingxiong stared at the bald elder in disbelief. This was simply standing him up in front of everyone. Even if he did not agree from the start, it was still better than going back on his word. With this, where would he put his face as a young master? Previously, he had confidently vowed to Hu Yinfeng and the others that he could easily settle it. The bald elder gave him a look and pointed in the direction of Shangguan Laner. His meaning was very clear. Between young Master Su and Miss Shangguan, the latter's face was obviously bigger. Even if Su Yuanzheng was a big shot in the Elders Guild, how could he compare to Shangguan Tianhua, the owner of Soaring Sky Pavilion? Chapter 3687. If Missy were to go back to Shanghai Tianhua and leave a bad impression on him, even if he was a high and mighty elder, he would be beaten down to the ground sooner or later. After all, the elders who had fallen under Shanghai Tianhua's iron fist were not just one or two. Su Lingxiong had nothing to say. If he was in the position of the bald elder, he would have done the same. In fact, when he thought about it, he was glad that the bald elder did not award the first place to Meng Tong. If he had left a bad impression on Shanghai Laner because of this, he would have suffered a great loss. On the other hand, letting Lin Yi get first place by luck didn't really matter to him, other than losing face a little. It didn't matter at all. Since even Su Lingxiong did not say anything, the other small characters like Meng Jueguang naturally did not dare to say anything. They could only watch as Lin Yi received the first place reward. Thank you for letting me win. Lin Yi smiled faintly and waved the bag of extra 10 pieces of spiritual jade in front of them. TSK, what a villain. Meng Tong's face was extremely ugly as he curled his lips. He felt as if he had eaten hundreds of flies. It was extremely disgusting, but he could only pinch his nose and swallow it down. Although Meng Jueguang also had a gloomy face, his eyes lit up when he saw the bag of spiritual jade in Lin Yi's hand. He said softly, "It's okay. Let him be happy for a while and go back to mess with some useless jade. This bag of good jade will be ours sooner or later." Ninth cousin is brilliant. Meng Tong's heart was instantly balanced. He gritted his teeth and said, "One day, when this kid finds out that all the spiritual jade he has accumulated are useless jade, I want to see what kind of expression he will have then. Of course, he will definitely cry until he dies." Meng Jueguang smiled coldly. Maybe the blow is too big and his heart might fall out. For ordinary people, even if a piece of scrap jade was exchanged for a piece of good jade, it would be worth it. They would feel heartache for at least half a day. For people like Lin Yi, who had been exchanged for more than 10 or even dozens of yuan in a row, when he came to his senses, his heart would probably be bleeding from the pain. The rookie trial finally came to an end with this dramatic turn of events. Lin Yi was first, Xiao Ran was third, and Xiao Honkai was fourth, although they did not take the top 3 spots. But compared to the dismal results of the newcomers under Meng Jiuguang, this was a great harvest. Meng Jiuguang had a total of 12 newcomers under his command. Other than Meng Tong, who had obtained second place and was able to obtain a building foundation pill as a consolation prize, the others were completely insignificant. Compared to the crucial reward of the building foundation pill, the 3 pieces of spiritual jades that were distributed to them could not even be considered as a consolation prize. And there was something even worse than this. Out of the 12 people, 5 of them did not even get 3 pieces of spiritual jades as a consolation prize. Not only did they not get any benefits, they also fell out of the top 10 in their first trial and entered the blacklist. They simply wanted to cry, but had no tears. For a moment, all the newcomers looked at Meng Jiuguang with resentment. They had initially pledged their allegiance to Meng Jiuguang in hopes of getting more benefits. But now, not only did they not get any benefits, they even threw away their bright future. It was simply a scam. Are all of you trash? Lin Yi and his team only had 3 people, and the 12 of you couldn't even deal with them? And you still have the face to complain to me? What's there to complain about? After returning from the back mountain hall, Meng Jiuguang gathered all the newcomers and could not help but roar. It was within his expectations. The blacklisting of Lin Yi and his team was a done deal. After all, no matter what, everyone was an expert at the same level. It was really inexcusable for the 12 of them to fail against 3 people. All the newcomers looked at Meng Tong. Meng Tong had no choice but to stand up and explain. Ninth cousin, the original plan was indeed going smoothly, but something happened that directly messed up our entire plan. You really can't blame us for not putting in enough effort. Can't blame you for not putting in enough effort? All right, tell me, what accident happened in the middle that allowed them to reverse such a huge disadvantage? Meng Jiuguang said snappily. Ninth cousin, you probably couldn't tell previously, but Lin Yi is now an early-stage foundation establishment expert. Meng Tong smiled bitterly at Meng Jiuguang. What? Early-stage foundation establishment expert? Meng Jiuguang originally thought that Meng Tong would come up with some far-fetched reason, but after hearing that, he was shocked. He looked at everyone in disbelief. That's impossible, right? Did all of you see it? Everyone nodded in unison. Meng Tong said with a bitter face, I saw it with my own eyes. We had already surrounded him and were about to succeed, but he wasn't afraid of us at all. He released the aura of an early-stage foundation establishment expert and scared all of us on the spot. All the newcomers looked strangely at Meng Tong. It was true that everyone was scared silly, but if not for Meng Tong being the first to escape, causing panic, the situation would not have fallen into Lin Yi's complete control. After all, there were 12 of them, and Lin Yi still had Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, these 2 exhausted burdens. If they really fought back then, it was hard to tell who would win or lose in the end. However, Meng Tong obviously wouldn't say such a shameful thing. If he didn't say it, the others naturally wouldn't say anything, or else they would offend him, and they would definitely make things difficult for them in the future. Seeing everyone say it in unison, Meng Jiuguang had no choice but to believe it. So, Lin Yi really broke through to the early-stage foundation establishment, but from his aura just now, it doesn't seem like it. He's no different from you Heaven Stage Great Perfection experts. Did you really fight him to confirm it? We didn't. At that time, we saw that the situation wasn't good, so we directly dispersed on the spot, Meng Tong answered awkwardly. You didn't fight? Meng Jiuguang was stunned and pondered. So you're saying that you were just scared by his aura? Everyone looked at each other and finally nodded. Although it was shameful to say it, they were indeed scared by Lin Yi's aura. That's right, you must have seen wrongly. Chapter 3688. That's possible. Meng Tong and the group of rookies looked at each other. Now that they recalled the situation back then, it did seem a little strange. It's very simple. If Lin Yi is really an early-stage foundation establishment expert, then the aura he usually shows should be that of an early-stage foundation establishment expert, and not the heaven-stage great perfection like all of you. Think about it. It's only been less than a month. Even the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion have not succeeded in building their foundation. How could Lin Yi, a mere kid from the secular world, be more awesome than the rookies? Bullshit. Meng Jueguang paused, then asked, besides, all of you just said that after Lin Yi scared all of you, he didn't do anything to you and just let you run away, right? Yes. The rookies nodded. This confirms my speculation even more. Meng Jueguang sneered and analyzed. Think about it. With your previous conflicts with Lin Yi, if he really is an early-stage foundation establishment expert, with his ruthless style of daring to injure Meng Tong on the first day, why would he let you off so easily? Even if he can't kill you due to the trial rules, it shouldn't be a problem to cripple you, right? The rookies were stunned. This was also the question they were most puzzled about. Ignoring the fact that Meng Tong and Li Jingming had run away first, the rest of them only got 100 points each. This was too easy on them. So it's clear that he's afraid that once he really starts fighting, it won't be easy to clean up after the Limit Golden Core effect disappears. After all, the Limit Golden Core effect lasts for a very short time. To him, the safest method is to use his aura to scare all of you. The more Meng Jueguang said, the more he felt that the possibility was high. It was almost more than 90%. So you're saying that all of us were fooled by that kid? Linny? Damn, this brat is too treacherous. After Meng Tong reacted, he couldn't help but gnash his teeth in hatred. Based on the situation at that time, if they hadn't been frightened by Lin Yi, they could have completely wiped out Lin Yi and the other two. If that had been the case, there wouldn't have been so many twists and turns later. Lin Yi wouldn't have been able to compete with him for the first place, but it was very likely that he would be last. But Senior Apprentice Brother Meng, the feeling I got from Lin Yi was, it doesn't look like she's faking it, right? Li Jingming was still a little skeptical. Meng Tong rolled his eyes at him and sneered. Are you stupid? Since he has made up his mind to deceive us, of course he has to pretend to be confident. Otherwise, how can he deceive us? He's a newbie who likes to act tough. Isn't he the best at acting tough? Li Jingming immediately stopped talking. Other than Meng Tong, although the other newbies also believed 70 to 80%, they still had the same doubts as Li Jingming in their hearts. If Lin Yi had only deceived one or two of them, it would be easier to understand. But there were 12 of them, and there were bound to be a few who were more observant. Wasn't Lin Yi's acting skills a little too good if he was able to trick all of them with just one extreme gene dan? Meng Jueguang looked at everyone's expression and said, although there's a 90% chance that Lin Yi relied on a golden core to deceive them, there's only 2 days left before the ranking competition. This kind of thing can't be sloppy. How about this? One of you go and test the truth. I'll give him a piece of spiritual jade as a reward. Everyone looked at each other, but no one stood up, although they also believed that Lin Yi was very likely to be pretending. What if he wasn't? What if he was a genuine early-stage foundation establishment realm master? If they rashly tested him for a piece of spiritual jade, wouldn't that be courting death? Moreover, with Lin Yi's strength, even if he wasn't an early-stage foundation establishment realm master, judging from his performance when he defeated Meng Tong in one move, it was absolutely a piece of cake for him to deal with them one-on-one. Wouldn't it be obvious that they were looking for a beating if they went over? Seeing this, Meng Jueguang had no choice but to call out a name. Meng Tong, you lead the way and test him. Meng Tong immediately flinched. Although he was 100% sure that Lin Yi wasn't an early-stage foundation establishment realm master, he was still afraid of being beaten up. He rolled his eyes and immediately declined. Ninth cousin, this good opportunity to make a contribution should be given to Jingming. He just happens to need spiritual jade. That's fine. Then Jingming, you go. Meng Jueguang waved his hand. Fuck. Li Jingming instantly exploded in anger. This bastard Meng Tong didn't dare to go, so he pushed this kind of hard task to me. He even said that it was giving me a chance to make a contribution. Fucking shameless. However, since Meng Jueguang had already said so, he didn't give him a chance to refuse. Unless he had a falling out with Meng Jueguang on the spot, He could only bite the bullet and accept it. In the end, Li Zhengming gritted his teeth. For the sake of revenge, I'll endure it. On the other hand, compared to Meng Jueguang's group of people who were gloomy and suspicious, Lin Yi and the others were in a good mood. They even had a few drinks together to celebrate. During the meal, after listening to Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai describe the process of the test, Bitter Shixiang looked at Lin Yi with his mouth wide open. Junior brother Lin, you're exaggerating. You've only been here for less than a month, and you've already reached foundation level. If I remember correctly, you're not only the first among the newcomers, but you've also broken the record. Although many newcomers were already Sky Class Full Circle Masters when they first entered the pavilion, from Sky Class Full Circle to Foundation Level Early Phase, other than putting in a huge amount of effort and resources, luck was also indispensable. Some people would be stuck at this level for decades, but if the luck wasn't there, they still wouldn't be able to break through the last barrier. In the history of the Welcome Pavilion, the record holder for the fastest foundation establishment was none other than miracle Dr. Zhang Liju, whose record was 48 days. And Lin Yi was at least 20 days ahead of him. I've already reached foundation level before I came here. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, but he couldn't tell them the truth. Compared to breaking the record in the pavilion, the fact that he had reached foundation level in the mortal world where spirit energy was sparse was even more shocking. If news of this got out, he might be captured and dissected for research purposes. After a few vague words, Lin Yi turned to the others and said seriously, Bitter Shixiang, Xiao Ran, and Honkai, don't tell anyone that I've reached foundation level yet. After all, it's better to keep a low profile. Hiding some of your strength might be useful at a critical moment. Chapter 3689. Lin Yi shook his head. Not necessarily. I only showed off the aura of an early phase foundation. I didn't actually fight them. With Meng Jueguang and the other suspicious personalities, they'll definitely be suspicious after this. Bitter Shixiang and Xiao Ran looked at each other and nodded. All right. After all, everyone had their own way of doing things, and since Lin Yi chose to keep a low profile, they would naturally try their best to cooperate. Bitter Shixiang thought about it. Based on past years, the newcomers usually stay in the pavilion for a full year, but if they succeed in their foundation establishment, they're allowed to enter the 3 pavilions early to become an inner disciple. What are your plans for the future, Lin Yi? Are there any additional benefits to becoming an inner disciple early? Lin Yi asked back. Other than being valued by the sect's higher-ups, the main benefit is that you can enjoy some of the benefits of being an inner disciple early. Other than that, there's nothing else, Bitter Shixiang explained. Then forget it. I'll stay in the pavilion for a while and improve my strength first. Lin Yi shook his head. With his condition, he didn't need the so-called benefits of the sect very much. And if he chose to enter Blue Cloud Pavilion early, not only would he not get any obvious benefits, but he would also be valued by the sect's higher-ups. There would be countless troubles that would follow, and he might as well stay in the pavilion to accumulate his strength first. After all, compared to other places, the pavilion was definitely a gentle cradle. There weren't that many problems, and it was perfect for training. Lin Yi knew very well that if he wanted to go to Middle Island to find Zhang Liju, other than improving his strength, anything else would be a waste of time. No matter where he went, strength was the way to go. Yeah, that's good, Bitter Shixiang nodded. Over the years in the Welcome Pavilion, he had seen many outstanding newcomers. After coming to the 3 pavilions, they immediately became ordinary, not because they were weaker, but because the environment they were in was stronger. At the end of the day, the pavilion was just a school. The 3 pavilions were the real, cruel society. The early phase of foundation establishment was already very good in the pavilion, but in the 3 pavilions, it was nothing. Lin Yi's decision to stay in the welcoming pavilion was a very wise one. At that moment, Lin Yi suddenly remembered something and pushed the foundation establishment pill in front of Xiao Honkai. Smiling, he said, "In any case, I already have no use for it. I'll give this foundation building pill to you. You two also have to break through as soon as possible." Xiao Honkai paused. Lin Yi had talked about this during the test, but now that the pill was right in front of him, he couldn't help but blush with excitement. This was the foundation-building pill that all newcomers yearned for. Even those second-generation cultivators with deep backgrounds in the Soaring Sky Pavilion were unable to obtain it. There were also those powerful old men from the Profound Pavilion. In order to fight for a single foundation establishment pill, they had also used all sorts of methods and schemes in the trial. But even so, they were unable to obtain it. In the end, most people still couldn't get it even though they wanted it. On the other hand, he was an ordinary grassroots newcomer with no background, and his strength wasn't that great, so he didn't get any decent results in the trial. Even the elixirs were all snatched away, but he was able to get such a gift. If this matter were spread, it would make a lot of people jealous. And all of this, it was all thanks to Lin Yi. Without Lin Yi, Xiao Honkai, wouldn't even be able to get 4th place in the trial, let alone hope for the foundation establishment pill. Instead, he would end up with 0 points, which would be a stain of incompetence on his body, and he would never be valued by the sect. Then I won't be polite. Thank you, Boss Lin. Xiao Honkai stood up, walked to Lin Yi, and kowtowed 3 times. Lin Yi was shocked, quickly helped him up, and frowned. What are you doing? You and I are brothers. Do we need this? The bitter senior brother and Xiao Ran, watching this scene, were also dumbfounded. In the cultivation world, although it was common to form cliques and recognize a boss, as the saying goes, a man's knees are gold, and any cultivator was in existence above thousands of living creatures. Except for the elders of the sect, they would not easily kneel to others. Even if it was a senior brother like Meng Jueguang, who wanted to make a newcomer like Meng Tong kneel to him, it was impossible. That was why Xiao Hong would do this, which was beyond their expectations. Boss Lin, don't be angry, I was just excited and couldn't help it. Xiao Honkai just realized what he had done, and even he was a little surprised, so he couldn't help but laugh. Lin Yi smiled, but although he said so, he understood in his heart that if Xiao Honkai didn't really think of himself as a boss, he wouldn't have done such an outrageous thing. Next time don't kneel so involuntarily. Didn't I just give you a foundation establishment pill? Scared me. Lin Yi laughed and scolded. I thought you wanted to propose to me. The bitter senior brother and Xiao Ran on the side laughed. Lin Yi's joke dissolved the embarrassment of the person involved, Xiao Honkai, but he didn't regret kowtowing to Lin Yi at all. Whether it was strength, character, or generosity to his own people, no matter from which aspect, Lin Yi was a rare good boss. Compared to people like Meng Jueguang, he was much more reliable. For a grassroots newcomer like him who didn't have any background, to be able to worship under Lin Yi was already a blessing that he had cultivated for several lifetimes. The 4 people drank a few more cups, and during the meal, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai frequently toasted to Lin Yi. Xiao Ran had an introverted personality, and his gratitude towards Lin Yi wasn't any less than Xiao Honkai, but he wouldn't express it so obviously, and could only express it through toasting. Lin Yi was also well aware of this, because both of them had a background in the secular world, and their temperaments were quite similar. His relationship with Xiao Ran was even closer than Xiao Hongsai's. After a few cups of wine, everything was understood without words. When drinking with close friends, 1,000 cups were not enough. At their level of strength, ordinary wine couldn't make them drunk. The 4 people were in a good mood today, and they drank until late at night. Only then did they go their separate ways. This drinking session had imperceptibly pulled the relationship between them closer, and there was a feeling of brotherhood between them, unlike before when they were purely huddling together for warmth. In the end, a relationship that was purely maintained by benefits would break sooner or later, but brothers could be together for a lifetime. Chapter 3690. Today, he was going to refine the foundation establishment pill overnight. The process was the same as the last time he refined the foundation establishment pill. After putting the herbs into the cauldron, he just needed to input true qi according to the instructions. Although the effect of the foundation establishment pill was above that of the foundation establishment pill, it was still a 4th grade pill after all, so there was no difference in the refining process. Please wait a moment. Jing Jing is calculating the refining time and temperature curve for Lin Gidge. Automatic refining script will be generated. Automatic refining script has been generated. According to the weight in the cauldron, one set of materials will be put into the pill. The estimated refining time is 6 hours and 20 minutes. Please save your true chi in advance. The estimated number of pills produced is 1. Sure enough, there was only 1 pill. Lin couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He had thought that he could get a few more pills like the last time he refined the foundation establishment pill. However, when he thought about it, he only had 1 set of materials this time. If he could successfully refine one, he would already be extremely lucky. If he wanted more, he would be too greedy. That would ruin his character. Sitting cross-legged, he adjusted his state a little. After making sure that his essence, chi, and spirit were restored to their best state, Lin began to use the art of dragon mastery to inject true chi into the cauldron. After all, he only had 1 set of materials this time. If he failed, he didn't know when he would be able to find another heart-devouring, exquisite grass. Therefore, this time, even if he couldn't intervene in the changes in the cauldron, at least he had to make sure that nothing went wrong within the scope of his ability. The night passed uneventfully until the next day, when the sky was bright. Only then did Lin finally let out a long breath and slowly stood up. He looked at the words displayed on the tablet of the cauldron. Lin couldn't help but feel lucky. Congratulations, Brother Lin. You have successfully refined one. The foundation establishment pill was different from the others. It was considered the best among all the 4th grade pills. With just 1 set of materials, he was able to successfully refine one. Apart from praising the genius Han Jingjing for modifying the godly pesticide cauldron, he could only thank his luck. The refinement this time, other than the occasional buzzing sound, the entire process was extremely smooth and there were no unexpected changes. Otherwise, if there were to be frequent accidents like last time when he was refining the foundation-breaking pill, Lin would really be scared out of his wits. If he failed in refining the foundation-breaking pill, then so be it. At most, he would just waste a few sets of ingredients. However, he did not have any heart-devouring, exquisite grass to concoct the foundation-building pill this time. If he failed this time, he would really want to cry, but have no tears. All the effort he had put in during the entire trial would be wasted. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. He opened the lid of the tripod. Lin quickly found the golden pill that he had been looking forward to. What was even rarer was that this golden pill actually had a circle of pill halo. Han Jingjing was worthy of being called an alchemy genius. After she modified this divine armament cauldron, she successfully refined it twice after coming to Heaven Stage Island. Moreover, every pill that came out of the furnace was of the highest grade with a pill halo. If this matter was spread out, it would really make other alchemists die of shame and anger. According to the usual practice, if there was no special event like the newcomer trial, Lin would go to the Jade Spirit Hall to report for mining, but these 2 days he could go or not. After all, 2 days later was the beginning of the month, and it was the first ranking competition of the entire Welcome Pavilion. In order to let every new disciple be ready, fully digest the trial results, and in order to play the best strength in the ranking competition, the Welcome Pavilion had a relevant agreement with the Jade Spirit Hall, allowing the new disciples to be absent temporarily. This was perfect for Lin who had just successfully refined the foundation-building pill. He needed time to digest this foundation-building pill. It was better to be early than late. No matter how good the pill was, it would only be effective after taking it. In addition, the foundation-building pill was not the kind of pill that had strong side effects, so Lin did not need to worry too much. As long as he had time, he could take it as soon as possible. Taking a deep breath, Lin slowly put the freshly refined foundation-building pill into his mouth, and then calmed his mind and concentrated, mobilizing his whole body's true chi to begin digesting the foundation-building pill. The foundation-building pill was extremely bitter when it entered the mouth. Perhaps it was because of its main medicinal ingredient, the heart-devouring exquisite grass. After taking it, It gave birth to bursts of heart-wrenching pain. If it was an ordinary person, perhaps they would directly faint from the pain. And even for a master in the early stage of foundation establishment like Lin Yi, with his true qi protecting his whole body's tendons and meridians, the process was extremely long and painful. He could not help but curse in his heart. If this foundation-building pill was not personally refined by me, I'm afraid I would have treated it as poison and forced out of my body. This medicinal effect is too fucking torturous. The heart-wrenching pain persisted for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, causing Lin Yi to sweat profusely. Finally, it gradually weakened. And just when Lin Yi thought he could relax, his body suddenly shook. This kind of feeling was as if a true qi bomb had exploded in his body. Then, he felt an inexhaustible and majestic medicinal effect was instantly released, spreading to every part of his body. It was constantly transformed into extremely pure, true qi, merging into every part of his tendons and meridians. Lin Yi originally thought that as a master in the early stage of foundation establishment, the true qi in his body was already very robust. But only now did he realize that he was really looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. Because under the medicinal effect of the foundation-building pill, in the short span of a few breaths, the true qi in his body had already soared to more than double. Even now it was still rising. No wonder it could not be found in the market square. It was only at this moment that Lin Yi truly realized the value of the foundation-building pill. This pill was enough to match tens of years of bitter cultivation for an ordinary early-stage foundation establishment expert. Even if it was Lin Yi himself who had the jade pendant space, he was afraid that he would need at least several years of bitter cultivation in order to achieve this effect. In contrast, the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill, which was also a grade 4 medicinal pill, did not have this kind of terrifying effect of 10 years of cultivation. In a market square, one could buy a foundation-building barrier-breaking pill for 400 spirit jades. But the foundation-building pill was simply a priceless item, let alone 400 spirit jades. Even if one was willing to pay 10 times the amount of spirit jades, one still might not be able to buy it. After the true qi in his body soared for a moment, Lin Yi very quickly touched the barrier that his bitter senior martial brother had once mentioned to him. He could clearly feel that the medicinal effect of the foundation-building pill had not yet fully manifested. Chapter 3691. If he wanted to go a step further, there was only one way, and that was to change to a bigger bottle. Before changing to a bigger bottle, no matter how much medicinal effect there was, it would only be wasted. After a long time, the excess medicinal effect would disappear without a trace. Normally speaking, the foundation-building pill not only had the effect of an experience pill, but it also had the effect of a foundation-building barrier-breaking pill, which was enough to break that layer of barrier. But at this moment, Lin Yi was very clear that this foundation-building pill had already used up too much medicinal effect, and the remaining medicinal effect was not enough to break the barrier. If this continued, he was afraid that the excess medicinal effect would be completely wasted. Lin Yi's heart moved, and he immediately took out a foundation-building barrier-breaking pill that he had refined last time, and without saying anything further, he took out a foundation-building barrier-breaking pill. After a moment, the medicinal effect of the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill took effect. Compared to the previous heart-wrenching pain of the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill, its symptoms were much milder. Lin Yi did not feel anything, and directly felt its effect. It was unknown where it came from, but within Lin Yi's body, there was suddenly a huge force, incomparably tyrannical impact on each and every one of his tendons. Wherever the force passed, regardless of whether the tendons were big or small, they all visibly swelled up. At the same time, the barrier that he had touched before also began to slowly melt. I broke through the barrier just like that. This process was so smooth that even Lin Yi himself found it hard to believe. But at this moment, the majestic true qi within his body continued to rapidly rise, clearly indicating that the barrier had indeed been broken by the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill. After breaking through the barrier, he could clearly feel it. Whether it was the degree of purity or the degree of strength, the true chi within his body had clearly soared compared to before. And at this time, the true chi within his body continued to rise. Although the intensity was not as fierce as at the beginning, the increase was still very obvious. This was clearly the residual effect of the foundation-building pill. This process continued for the time it took for a stick of incense to burn before finally, gradually calming down. And at this time, the true chi within Lin Yi's body compared to when he had just broken through the barrier had increased by a third. After feeling the transformation of his body, which was as if he had been reborn, only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had decisively swallowed a foundation-building barrier-breaking pill. Otherwise, the remaining medicinal effects of the foundation-building pill would have been completely wasted. If he had followed the normal pace of cultivation, the extra one-third of true chi in his body would have been equivalent to a year of bitter cultivation. At this time, the ghostly thing beside him suddenly said, "Not bad. You actually reached the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage in such a short time. You're pretty awesome. Senior, you flatter me." Although he was modest on the surface, he was very happy inwardly. After all, this damned thing used to be an elder of the Spirit Beast clan, a super powerful existence that could be ranked in the entire Heaven Stage Island. Even with Lin Yi's experience, he still praised it. This was extremely rare. Unexpectedly, the ghost said in disdain in the blink of an eye, "What's there to be happy about? You're so weak that you can't even stand a chance in the North Island. You don't even have the qualification to go to the island where we are. Why are you so smug?" After saying that, the ghostly thing fell silent, leaving Lin Yi alone with a bitter smile. This was too much of a blow to him. However, he could understand the painstaking efforts of the ghost. Just as it said, although the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage was a lot stronger than the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, it was still a beginning stage in the Heaven Stage Island. There was really nothing to be proud of. There was still a long way to go in the future. However, as a newly advanced master at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, it might not be enough in other places, but at least in this small welcome pavilion, it was more than enough. Because this meant that in terms of strength, he was already on par with senior stewards like Meng Jueguang. Even if there was any conflict in the future, he wouldn't have to be afraid of the other's strength. And according to Lin Yi's usual invincibility at the same level, if there was a chance, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill Meng Jueguang. Of course, this didn't mean that his strength would break through to the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. In order to fully display his strength, not only did he need time to consolidate his strength, but he also needed to further practice the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. Compared to before, even if he used the 21st style of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm, it wouldn't exhaust all the chi in his body. In fact, with his current state, he could use the 21st style twice. And more importantly, he could finally go one step further and start to try to use the 22nd style of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. The 21st style of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm could kill a master at the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. If it was the 22nd style, which was even more powerful, he was completely confident that he could kill a master at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage in one move. After continuing to practice in the space of the jade pendant for a while, when he walked out of the cave, the sky was dark again. However, this time he didn't take the initiative to go out. He felt that someone was touching the restriction of his cave. "It's you? What's the matter?" When He saw Li Zhengming standing at the door, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Li Zhengming's expression was slightly conflicted. After stammering for a while, he seemed to have made up his mind and said, "Brother Yi, I heard that the spiritual jades awarded to the first place in the trial are all of high quality. I wonder if I can exchange one with you?" You want to exchange spiritual jades with me? Lin Yi finally understood Li Zhongming's intention. He couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Meng Jueguang and his gang really can't wait. The 10 pieces of spiritual jades have just been handed to me, and they're already in a hurry to send Li Zhongming to make the first move. That's right. Apart from assisting in daily practice, high-grade spiritual jades also have certain benefits for building one's foundation. So I want to keep a few pieces. In any case, Brother Lin Yi, you're already an early-stage foundation establishment expert. You shouldn't have any need for this, right? Li Zhongming stared closely at Lin Yi's expression. This time, his main purpose for coming here was naturally not to exchange spiritual jades. Exchanging spiritual jades was just an excuse that Meng Jueguang arranged for him to get close to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if Lin Yi hid in the cave all day and didn't come out, even if he wanted to test him, he wouldn't be able to find out where to start. Lin Yi's expression slightly changed. He pretended to be hesitant and said, "You're right. But even for early-stage foundation establishment experts, high-grade spiritual jades are still very hard to come by." Li Zhongming hurriedly said, "The price is negotiable. Like last time, 3 for 1 is also fine." Chapter 3692. Okay. Li Zhongming nodded his head. As he followed Lin Yi into the cave, he suddenly asked, "Brother Lin Yi, that foundation building pill of yours shouldn't be of use anymore, right? I wonder if you can sell it to me?" "Oh, you still want to buy foundation building pills?" Lin Yi stopped and turned his head to look at him. "Do you have that many spirit jades? The price of foundation building pills isn't low." Lin Yi's words weren't to deceive Li Zhongming. The price of foundation building pills was indeed not low. Although the market price wasn't as exaggerated as the foundation-breaking pills' 400 spirit jades, even the lowest price was over 100 spirit jades. Logically speaking, an ordinary newcomer like Li Zhongming wouldn't be able to afford it. Li Zhongming stared at every change in Lin Yi's expression, clenched his teeth, and said, "I can think of a way." Don't tell me he wants to find Meng Jueguang to get a pile of scrap jades to deceive me? Lin Yi secretly laughed, then shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, I've already given that foundation-building pill to someone else." Given it to someone else? Li Zhongming was clearly stunned. Foundation-building pills were such precious things, yet they were casually given away? Even if they couldn't use it themselves, they could still exchange it for a large amount of spirit jades in the market. How could this kind of thing be casually given away? Could it be that this guy's previous performance in the trial was really just a bluff? Could it be like what Meng Jueguang said, that he wasn't an early-stage foundation-building expert at all? Using this kind of perfunctory excuse, he probably wanted to keep it for himself to use. Foundation-building pills were only useful for heaven-stage great perfection experts. It was normal for Li Zhongming to have this kind of thought. Moreover, from the moment he saw Lin Yi, he had been observing Lin Yi's expression. All the signs combined together. He was already 80% sure that this Lin Yi hadn't reached foundation building yet. But he couldn't just leave like that. This was because Meng Jueguang's request was that he had to see Lin Yi fight with his own eyes no matter what. Otherwise, all other judgments based on appearances would be unreliable. That's right, I gave it to someone else. Lin Yi didn't intend to go into detail. A man's wealth was his own ruin. If he said that it was for Qiao Hongkai, it might cause trouble for Qiao Hongkai. The more Lin Yi said this, the more certain Li Zhongming was. This guy definitely wanted to keep it for himself. Otherwise, why would he be so tight-lipped about it? "Okay, Brother Lin Yi, take out your spiritual jades and let's exchange," Li Zhongming urged. Lin Yi nodded and blocked Li Zhongming's line of sight. He turned around and took out a piece of spiritual jades from the space in the jade pendant, pretending to take it out from his pocket. However, just as he was about to turn around and exchange with Li Zhongming, an icy cold energy suddenly attacked him from behind. He had seen this icy cold energy during the trial. It was Li Zhongming's sky frost fist. So that's how it is. Lin Yi finally understood. It turned out that this guy didn't come to exchange spiritual jades with him. He was waiting for an opportunity to sneak attack him. Lin Yi's lips curled into a helpless smile. No wonder this damn thing purposely attacked him. It seemed that after today's breakthrough, he was indeed a little complacent. If it was any other time, how could he not have noticed Li Zhengming's scheme? While he was alert, Lin Yi also found it a little funny. This Li Zhengming was just a heaven-stage great perfection expert, and he dared to sneak into the cave abode to attack him. Where did his courage and boldness come from? Not to mention that Lin Yi was now a real early-stage foundation establishment expert. Even before he broke through, Li Zhengming couldn't easily sneak attack him, let alone now. At this moment, Li Zhengming was only 2 steps away from Lin Yi, and Lin Yi's back was facing him. If it was between experts of the same level, this would indeed be a very fatal sneak attack. It was almost impossible to avoid. Unfortunately, Lin Yi was not a heaven-stage great perfection expert of the same level as him, but a peak early-stage foundation establishment expert who was 2 levels higher than him. Facing a peak early-stage foundation establishment expert, even 100 more heaven-stage great perfection experts couldn't sneak attack him. This was an absolute level suppression, and there was no possibility of a successful counterattack. Even Lin Yi couldn't fight so many levels higher than him. With a slight movement of his feet, before Li Zhengming's heavenly frost vital qi could touch Lin Yi, the person in front of him had already turned into an afterimage. In the next moment, Lin Yi suddenly appeared behind him and said in an unpredictable tone, "What do you mean by this?" Li Zhengming was shocked. Before he could react, he was already pinned to the wall by Lin Yi's foot, causing the cave abode to tremble. Lin Yi didn't use any martial arts in this kick. Under the huge level suppression, even if he relied on pure speed and strength, it was far enough to completely crush Li Zhengming. Puffed. Li Zhengming suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking at the unfathomable Lin Yi in front of him, his heart instantly sank to the bottom. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. How is this a fucking early-stage foundation establishment expert? This aura is clearly at the same level as Meng Jueguang. This guy is really a peak early-stage foundation establishment expert. When he thought about how he had sneak attacked a peak early-stage foundation establishment expert, Li Zhengming felt dizzy. This was like a 3-year-old kid challenging a heavyweight boxing champion. Even if he wanted to die, this was not the way to do it. This time, he was really killed by those bastards Meng Jueguang. Looking at Li Zhengming's horrified expression, Lin Yi couldn't help but think that he had miscalculated. His original intention was to hide his strength and pretend to be a heaven-stage great completion. However, because he had just broken through, he still couldn't perfectly control every inch of strength. When he was sneak attacked just now, he instinctively revealed the strength of a peak early-stage foundation establishment expert. Although he didn't use any powerful martial arts because he didn't want to kill anyone in his cave abode, with Li Zhengming's eyesight, even if it was just a simple punch and kick, it was enough for him to judge his strength. Looking at the trembling Li Zhengming, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown slightly. A thought flashed across his mind. Should I kill him to keep him quiet? While it would be troublesome to kill someone in his own cave, Li Zhengming was the one who ambushed him first. Even if Lin Yi killed him on the spot, no one would be able to say anything. According to the rules of the cultivation world, no matter what the reason was, breaking into someone else's cave abode was already an unforgivable crime. Even if it was exposed, the mastermind, Meng Jueguang, and the others could only suffer in silence. Chapter 3693. With the disparity in strength between them. Once Lin Yi made up his mind to kill him, he would not even have the chance to escape from the cave and call for help. Damn it! How could he die here for no reason? Li Zhengming's eyes flickered and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, making him look extremely miserable. As a grassroots newcomer with no background, he quickly sought refuge with Meng Jueguang after joining the Welcome Pavilion. This was a choice he had no choice but to make. Although he was not optimistic about Meng Jueguang's character, at least in front of the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, he was the thickest and most practical thigh to rely on. In order to achieve the goal he had been suppressing for a long time, he had to quickly increase his strength. And in order to do this, he needed a large amount of cultivation resources. As a Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, other than seeking refuge with Meng Jiuguang, this powerful senior, he had no other choice. In fact, this was indeed the case. After decisively seeking refuge with Meng Jiuguang, Li Zhongming had indeed tasted a lot of benefits. Whether it was the second cave at the foot of the mountain or the seventh mining area, they were all treatment that the other Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers envied. However, what shocked him, as well as all the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples, was that every time they met Lin Yi, things would always develop in an unexpected direction. Or, more accurately, it didn't make any sense. But now, Li Zhongming finally understood the root of this unscientific situation. As a newcomer who had only entered the Welcome Pavilion for a month, Lin Yi was now an expert at the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. He was already on equal footing with a senior like Meng Jiuguang. If this thing could still be scientific, then it would be strange. There was no such thing as reaping without sowing in this world. Being a lackey had its benefits, but at the same time, it also had its difficulties. Apart from Meng Tong, he was the first loyal follower of Meng Jiuguang. Every time there was a crisis, Li Zhongming would naturally become the first choice of cannon fodder. This was something that could not be pushed away. Since they were going to be cannon fodder, they had to have the awareness of being cannon fodder. They might have been lucky to get away with it once or twice, but they couldn't be so lucky every time. Just like now, Li Zhongming clearly knew that he had kicked an iron plate. If he didn't make a decision soon, he might just die here. This time, Meng Jiuguang and Meng Tong, that bunch of idiots, had really tricked them to death. Lin Yi condescendingly looked down at the battered and exhausted Li Zhongming coldly and expressionlessly said, "Since you dared to launch a sneak attack on me, then you should be aware of it, right? I can see that you and Meng Jiuguang are not the same kind of people, but it's a pity. If you do something wrong, you have to pay the price." Hearing this, Li Zhongming's heart suddenly trembled because he could clearly feel that the other party's killing intent had become stronger. A thought in his mind made his hair stand on end. Lin Yi is serious. He really intends to kill me. Seeing that Lin Yi was about to make a move, Li Zhongming knelt down with a bang. He hurriedly said, "Boss Lin Yi, please spare me. I had no choice. It was Meng Jiuguang and the rest who forced me to test you." Looking at this scene, Lin Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. In his previous impression, Li Zhongming wasn't this kind of cowardly person. If it was Meng Tong who did this, it would be easier for him to accept it. After all, that guy was obviously someone who bullied the weak and feared the strong. But this Li Zhongming, he didn't look like that. "I know they sent you to test me. As for whether or not I had no choice, this is not a reason for me to spare your life. Do you understand?" Lin Yi looked at him calmly, his eyes still flashing with killing intent. "I understand. Boss Lin Yi, don't worry. I will definitely not leak a word about you." Li Zhongming hurriedly responded and nodded. The reason why Lin Yi wanted to kill him now was actually very simple. He knew too much. Not only did he know that Lin Yi had successfully built his foundation, but he also knew that Lin Yi was already at the peak of the early stage of foundation building. For Lin Yi, who wanted to keep a low profile, this was obviously a huge hidden danger. What's more, he, Li Zhongming, was Meng Jiuguang's subordinate. Once this information fell into the hands of Meng Jiuguang, not only would Lin Yi's plan to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger fail, but it would also cause a lot of unexpected trouble. After all, a grassroots newcomer who had entered the Welcome Pavilion for less than a month had jumped 2 levels to become a peak early stage of foundation building. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause an extraordinary sensation. At that time, the situation would definitely not be under Lin Yi's control. Lin Yi sneered and looked at him, his tone unpredictable. You should have heard of this saying, "Only dead people will not reveal secrets." This, Li Zhongming's heart suddenly sank. What Lin Yi meant was that he really wanted to kill him to silence him. He saw that the killing intent on Lin Yi's body was getting stronger and stronger. Maybe he would attack the next moment. He was just a heaven stage full circle in front of a peak early stage of foundation building like Lin Yi. It was impossible for him to have the slightest bit of power to fight back. Once Lin Yi attacked, there would only be one ending for him: death. I'm not willing. I endured for more than 10 years, went through all kinds of hardships to enter the welcome pavilion, and finally found a little dawn of revenge. How could I die here for no reason, in the hands of a person who had nothing to do with me? Bang, bang, bang. Li Jingming suddenly kowtowed to Lin Yi 3 times. The kowtowing made his head bleed, and it was too horrible to look at. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched. What was going on these 2 days? Why did everyone just kowtow to him? Xiao Honkai was like this before, and now Li Jingming was doing it again. Boss Lin, I know you don't believe me, but I still have things I have to do, so I really can't die here. No matter what, please believe me this time. I was forced to rely on Meng Jueguang previously. I really don't want to be an accomplice to a villain. Li Jingming said sincerely with a head full of blood. Things you have to do. Lin Yi sized up Li Jingming with his virtual eyes. His words sounded sincere, and it didn't sound like he was lying. And from the few times he had met Li Jingming before, this guy was indeed a little strange. When he was sent to set him up, he even deliberately gave a lot of hints. This meant that at least in his heart, he didn't really want to set him up. He did this only because he had to rely on Meng Jueguang, and he had no choice. Chapter 3694. Li Jingming knew that if he hesitated any longer, he would be killed in one move. Therefore, he could only reveal everything about himself before Lin Yi took action. That way, he might still have a chance of survival. That's right. Boss Lin Yi, you're from the secular world, so you probably don't know much about the local affairs on Heaven Stage Island. I wonder if you've heard of the Qiushui Villa massacre 16 years ago. Li Jingming stared at Lin Yi's expression and asked. Lin Yi's expression changed slightly. You mean Qiushui Villa in Qiushui Town on the North Island? I've heard a little about it. When he was chatting with Senior Brother Kubai and the others, they often talked about the local customs and practices of Heaven Stage Island. One of the things that left the deepest impression on him was the massacre of the Qiushui Villa that Senior Brother Kubai mentioned 2 days ago while they were drinking. This incident happened 16 years ago. At that time, Qiushui Town was still one of the few big towns on the island. Among them, Qiushui Villa was the most powerful one. It was said that at its peak, even the higher-ups of the 3 major pavilions had to personally prepare lavish gifts for the old master of Qiushui Villa to celebrate his birthday. At that time, looking at the entire Heaven Stage Island's North Island, apart from the 3 pavilions, Qiushui Villa was undoubtedly one of the top families and forces in the North Island. However, such a colossus in the eyes of countless people had collapsed overnight at its most glorious time. There were more than 1,500 people in the Qiushui Manor. From the head of the family to the servants, all of them were killed. Not a single person was left alive. The luxurious manor that occupied hundreds of acres of land was also burned to the ground overnight. And this was the legendary Qiushui Villa massacre case that caused a sensation. After the incident, the 3 major pavilions were shocked. In order to investigate the truth and arrest the real culprit, they did not hesitate to send out the top forces of the law enforcement hall. However, after several months of investigation, they found nothing in the end. The case was left unsettled. No one knew who the real culprit was, nor did they know why he had annihilated the entire Qiushui Manor in a single night. As time passed, people would often bring up this shocking tragedy as a topic of conversation, but that was all there was to it. Li Jingming looked at Lin Yi with a burning gaze and said in a choked voice, "My name isn't Li Jingming. It's just an alias to deceive others. My real name is Qiu Jiming, and my father was the Qiushui Manor's patriarch, Qiu Jingtang. He was the only survivor among the 1,541 people in the Qiushui Manor. So, the only reason I'm alive is to take revenge. Before that, I absolutely cannot die." Lin Yi was stunned. He really didn't expect that Li Jingming was carrying such a deep blood feud. No wonder he felt an inexplicable sense of heaviness whenever he saw this person. He had thought that it was because he was scheming. Who would have thought that the source of all this was the resentment of 1,540 people? Understand. I deeply sympathize with your tragic experience, but that's all. Lenny nodded, but the murderous intent in his eyes didn't diminish. The reason was simple. No matter how deep the blood feud Li Jingming was carrying, what did it have to do with Lin Yi? Was it because the other party had not taken revenge? Was that why he couldn't bear to let him go? Lin Yi, who had fought his way up from the secular world, had seen many sinister people's hearts. He wouldn't be so easily soft-hearted. In a world of cultivation, where the strong preyed on the weak. When one's life was in the hands of others, it was obviously impossible to rely on sympathy to survive. At the very least, one had to show the value of living. This was an obvious truth that Lenny understood, and so did Li Jingming. Boss Lenny, I'm not telling you this to gain sympathy. I'm just telling you the reason why I must live. Li Jingming's expression became calm again. He paused and said, "If you let me live today, I can serve you from now on. I'll go through fire and water for you without any second thoughts. I can even be your spy and monitor every move of Meng Jueguang's group. This is the biggest bargaining chip I can think of. If Boss Lin, he still doesn't believe me, then I have nothing else to say. Spy for me?" Lin, he raised his eyebrows and pinched his chin. "I can consider that." According to his plan, even though he was now at the peak of the early stage of Foundation establishment, he still had to hide in the welcoming pavilion to cultivate and increase his strength for a period of time. His biggest problem in the welcoming pavilion was Meng Jueguang's group. Although with his current strength, Meng Jueguang's group would find it difficult to do anything to him. If they secretly thought of a bunch of dirty tricks, it would be more or less troublesome for Lenny. On the other hand, if he could plant a mole in this group of people, then everything would be different. Once any so-called dirty tricks were seen through in advance, the effects would definitely be greatly reduced. If it was used well, it might even achieve the opposite effect and gain benefits from it. Li Jingming's suggestion just happened to scratch Lin Yi's itch. Looking at Meng Jueguang's group, a guy like Meng Tong obviously couldn't be bribed or controlled, and the other newcomers' positions were too marginal. Most of the time, they might not be able to see through Meng Jueguang's plans. In comparison, Li Jingming was the most suitable candidate to be a spy. Seeing that Lin Yi was moved, Li Jingming was instantly overjoyed. He hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and said, "It's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to guard against a stab in the dark. Boss Lin Yi, although your strength is strong and you don't fear any of their challenges, what if Meng Jueguang plays dirty tricks on you? After all, as a senior steward, he has much more information than you and I. If you can't see through it in advance, you might be able to avoid it once or twice, but there will always be a time when you are careless, right?" Lenny glanced at him and said, "That's right, but why should I believe you? Since you can betray Meng Jueguang, you can turn around and betray me, right?" Li Jingming had already expected that Lin Yi would have this concern, so he immediately took out a jade token and handed it to Lin Yi, saying, "This is the identity token of my Qiushui manor. My identity information is engraved on it. Other than the late Jade, carving master of Qiushui manor, no one else in the world can copy it. This is my biggest secret. Once this identity token is exposed, I will definitely die without a burial place." Lin Yi took the identity token and carefully observed it. It was made of high-quality spiritual jade. Not only was its exterior carved into the shape of a manor, but what was even more bizarre was that inside the spiritual jade, there were dozens of tiny words that were almost undetectable. They were a group of 8 birth characters, and the first row was carved with Li Jingming's original name, Qiu Jiming. Chapter 3695. This identity card can at most prove that you are a survivor of Qiushui Villa. Why would you die once it is exposed? Lin Yi asked doubtfully. Li Jingming laughed bitterly. Boss Lin, you should know that this case alerted the entire law enforcement hall's strongest lineup back then, but it ended without a conclusion. With the law enforcement hall's ability, do you really think that they can't find the mastermind behind such a big case? Continue, Lin Yi said calmly. When he heard senior brother Kubai talk about it, he also had the same doubts. It was impossible for there to be no clues left behind to exterminate the entire Chioshui villa of 1,540 people. If the law enforcement hall really wanted to investigate, it shouldn't be difficult to find a real culprit. However, in the end, the investigation ended without a conclusion after a few months. This kind of ending was really thought-provoking. It's not that they couldn't investigate, but they didn't dare to. That's because the biggest mastermind behind the scenes is the top boss of the Elders Guild of the Three Great Pavilions. Li Zhengming gritted his teeth and looked at Lin Yi. Boss Lin Yi, you must be wondering why I chose a pseudonym with the surname Li, right? The reason is very simple. It's because the biggest mastermind behind the scenes is surnamed Li. I want to use this pseudonym to constantly remind myself that I carry the blood feud of 1,540 people on my back. Lin Yi finally understood. If that was the case, once Li Zhengming's identity card was exposed, he would really die a horrible death. That was because the big boss of the Elders Guild with the surname, Li would definitely not allow a fish like Li Zhengming to escape the net and roam freely outside. In other words, if all of this was true, Li Zhengming handing over the identity card meant that his life was in the hands of Lin Yi. If he had any ulterior motives, Lin Yi could kill him at any time. Even if he had people like Meng Jueguang to protect him, it would be useless. Okay, I believe you. Lin Yi finally nodded. If he still remained indifferent after Li Zhengming said this, it would be a little too much. Unless he didn't want Li Zhengming to be his mole from the start. But the reality was that he needed Li Zhengming to be his mole. Li Zhengming also showed enough sincerity. Now that things had developed to this point, the two of them naturally hit it off. Li Zhengming couldn't help but be overjoyed, but before he could feel the joy of surviving a disaster, Lin Yi casually threw the identity card back to him. He couldn't help but shiver. Boss Lin Yi, what is the meaning of this? Lin Yi smiled, not minding it. Since I already believe that you're loyal to me, I'm willing to help you. Since I already believe that you sincerely want to rely on me, then I don't need this kind of cumbersome thing. After all, if you really want to betray me in the future, then even if I have this identity card, it would be meaningless. This was the truth. Although this identity card was a fatal threat to Li Zhengming, if he really thought of a way, it was still possible to get rid of this identity card restriction. But even so, this action of Lin Yi still made Li Zhengming feel flattered. He hurriedly expressed his loyalty. Thank you for Boss Lin Yi's trust. I, Li Zhengming, swear to the heavens that no matter what happens in the future, I won't dare to have the slightest bit of disloyalty. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me. I don't believe in oaths. I only believe in my own strength. I'll say the ugly words first. In the future, if you have any disloyalty, I can easily take your life. When that time comes, no one can save you. Do you understand? As he spoke, Lin Yi's imposing manner as a peak early-stage Foundation establishment expert was completely released. The entire cave trembled slightly. Li Zhengming hurriedly prostrated on the ground. I understand. Okay, you can get up. Lin Yi nodded lightly. Yes. Li Zhengming immediately got up nimbly. Although his injuries weren't light, Lin Yi didn't use any martial arts when he beat him. At this time, he couldn't even stand up. Lin Yi thought for a while and ordered, when you go back later, report to Meng Jueguang that I'm now in the early stage of Foundation establishment. Do you understand what I mean? Li Zhengming was stunned. He thought about the key points in his mind and quickly understood Lin Yi's meaning. He nodded. I understand. If he went back this time and reported to Meng Jueguang that Lin Yi was still in heaven stage great perfection and hadn't succeeded in Foundation establishment, although this was the best way to hide his strength in the short term, it would be easy to expose flaws in the following ranking competition. Instead, it was better to reveal a little bit of Lin Yi's strength to Meng Jueguang in advance. This way, he wouldn't reveal Lin Yi's trump card. At the same time, he could also gain people's trust. Only then could he work as an inside man for a long time. Then, Boss Lin Yi, I'll leave first. Li Zhengming glanced at Lin Yi. He had already been in the cave for a while. If he stayed here for too long, it would be easy to arouse suspicion. Wait a minute. Lin Yi suddenly stopped him and handed over a piece of spiritual jade. Didn't you say you wanted to exchange spiritual jades with me? After all, you came in with this excuse. If you go back empty-handed, Meng Jueguang and the others will still have to question you, right? This. Li Zhengming couldn't help but be a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a long time, he stammered, Boss Lin Yi, there's something I have to tell you. You must be mentally prepared. You must hold on later. Lin Yi saw his expression and already guessed what he was going to say. He couldn't help but laugh. All right, just say it. That before, didn't a lot of people come to exchange spiritual jades with you? In fact, Meng Jueguang gave us a pile of waste jades and asked us to use them to cheat you of your good jades. In other words, you used a dozen good jades to exchange for a pile of worthless waste jades. You were cheated by Meng Jueguang, Li Zhengming said awkwardly. In fact, he had always been very puzzled about this matter. In his opinion, with Lin Yi's shrewdness, how could he not be able to distinguish good jades and waste jades? Moreover, he was cheated by these people using the same excuse again and again. Even when he deliberately exposed a few flaws, Lin Yi still didn't have the slightest reaction. Lin Yi chuckled and said, I know. I knew this was a scam from the beginning. Huh? Then why did you? Li Zhengming was dumbfounded. How could there be someone who knew that it was a scam, but still cooperated and fell for it? Lin Yi smiled faintly. I have a special use for collecting waste jades. In comparison, I don't rely much on good jades. So I'm happy to cooperate with you. I can't wait for you to give me more waste jades. Chapter 3696. Lin Yi smiled but didn't say anything. He didn't intend to explain in detail. After all, Li Zhengming hadn't been with him for long. It was better to keep this kind of thing a little mysterious. After exchanging 3 pieces of useless jade with Lin Yi for a piece of good jade, Li Zhengming turned around and left. Lin Yi's voice came from behind. If Meng Jueguang finds anything unusual, tell me in advance. It's okay, even if you can't be a mole. I'll cover for you. I won't let you suffer any losses. Okay. Li Zhengming's heart warmed, and he nodded heavily. The moment he stepped out of Lin Yi's cave, he suddenly felt that even though today's trip was extremely dangerous, it was very meaningful. It was even enough to change the course of his life. Although he had no choice but to rely on Lin Yi, it was also a kind of release for him, who had suffered under Meng Jueguang. After all, no matter how he looked at it, Boss Lin Yi was much more reliable than a wretched small fry like Meng Jueguang. From today onwards, I, Li Zhengming, am also on Lin Yi's side. Looking at Li Zhengming's back view as he left, Lin Yi pinched his chin thoughtfully. Even he didn't expect things to develop to this stage so suddenly. If Li Zhengming hadn't offered to be a mole, there might have been another corpse in the cave. Li Zhengming was forced to surrender. Although he took the initiative to reveal his biggest secret in order to give others a handle, he didn't go into details. For example, why Qiushui Villa was destroyed and why he, the son of the important family leader, was able to escape. Also, why did he carry his identity token with him if it was a fatal weakness? If Lin Yi really wanted to dig deeper, he could probably dig out many secrets from Li Zhengming. It might even involve the big secret of Qiushui Villa. After all, it was something that the elders would not hesitate to go to war for. Once the reason was dug out, it would definitely be a big deal. However, just like how Lin Yi didn't want to reveal his secrets to others, it was understandable that Li Zhengming didn't say anything about his family secrets. In the end, Lin Yi didn't care how big of a secret Li Zhengming was hiding. As long as Li Zhengming didn't betray him and did his job as a mole, that was enough. If Li Zhengming really did betray him, it would be like what he said just now. With his strength, it would be easy for him to take Li Zhengming's life. He didn't need to hold anything against him at all. Lin Yi believed that Li Zhengming wouldn't betray him, at least not in a short period of time. It wasn't wishful thinking that he believed Li Zhengming's so-called loyalty. In the cultivation world that was full of deceit, as long as the temptation was big enough, anyone could throw away their principles at any time. Li Zhengming was no exception. The reason why Lin Yi was so sure was that he believed that Li Zhengming was rational and smart enough. Any smart guy would always be able to recognize the reality and know what was the best choice for him. After leaving Lin Yi's cave abode, Li Zhengming was immediately called away by the people who had been waiting there. However, he wasn't called to Meng Tong's cave abode number 15 at the foot of the mountain, but to Meng Jueguang's cave abode on the opposite mountain. As soon as he stepped into the cave abode, Li Zhengming couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the familiar faces inside. It wasn't just Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong who were waiting here. There were also Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang from Soaring Pavilion. What surprised him the most was that even Su Lingqiong, young Master Su, was actually among them. Li Zhengming couldn't help but smile secretly. This lineup was simply the most obvious anti-Lin Yi alliance of Yingxin Pavilion. Seeing Li Zhengming coming in and seeing his bloody and embarrassing appearance, everyone waiting here was shocked. Wasn't it just to test Lin Yi's strength? It wasn't like he was going to fight to the death with Lin Yi. Was there a need to be so horrifying? Fuck, Lin Yi beat the shit out of you. Why are you so stupid? It's just a test. Do you have to fight to the death with him? Don't you know how to use your brain? Meng Tong cried out in surprise. He was gloating, but in his heart he was glad. If he hadn't been quick-witted and pushed the task to Li Zhengming, he would be the one in this miserable state now. I'm so fucking quick-witted. Li Zhengming rolled his eyes helplessly. If he didn't rely on Lin Yi, he would probably be pissed off by Meng Tong now. He actually chose this kind of trash as a teammate. Now that he thought about it, he must have been blind. Shut the fuck up. Meng Jueguang glared at Meng Tong. If he allowed this guy to continue making sarcastic remarks, it would probably chill Li Zhengming's heart. In the future, Li Zhengming wouldn't work so hard for him anymore. Turning his head, Meng Jueguang pretended to be gentle and said, "How is it? What is Lin Yi's strength now?" Li Zhengming was speechless again. If it was any other normal person, the first thing they would ask at this time would be whether his injury was serious or not. But this fucking Meng Jueguang didn't care about his life at all. He didn't even mention the promised reward of a piece of spiritual jade. At the end of the day, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong were both cold-hearted people. Now that he thought about it, his decision to rely on Lin Yi was simply the wisest decision he made since he entered the Welcome Pavilion. After slightly adjusting his breathing, Li Zhengming replied, "Senior Meng, that Lin Yi has indeed succeeded in building his foundation. He is now an expert in the early stage of building his foundation. I am no match for him at all. If it wasn't for him being afraid of causing a scene that would get out of hand, I'm afraid I would have been killed by him in one move just now." What? That guy has really succeeded in building his foundation? Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? Meng Jueguang was shocked. Even Su Lingqiong and the others found it hard to believe. Even if Lin Yi was really a cultivation genius, it was impossible for him to have a deep foundation in the secular world where the spiritual energy was thin. Moreover, he had only been in the Welcome Pavilion for less than a month. During this time, he didn't get many decent cultivation resources. Even his cave was the extremely rotten number 14 cave at the foot of the mountain. The only good jade he had on hand had already been swindled away by them with useless jade. How could he have succeeded in building his foundation in a month? Isn't this a little too exaggerated? If he remembered correctly, this had already broken the Welcome Pavilion's foundation building record for the past few hundred years. Chapter 3697. What's so strange about that? Wasn't I defeated by him in one move? If Lin Yi was really a foundation establishment early stage expert, trash like you should have been killed in one move. How could you come back alive? Meng Tong muttered in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. After all, This matter was too embarrassing. How could he take the initiative to expose his own scars? But if that's the case, why didn't he be ruthless to you guys during the trial? And the aura that he usually exudes is obviously only at the Heaven Stage Great Circle? Meng Jiuguang still had some doubts. Instinctively, he didn't want to believe that this was the truth. Li Jingming was slightly surprised. Making these people believe that Lin Yi was now a Foundation Establishment early-stage expert was the first order that Lin Yi gave him. As a spy who had just defected, this first mission definitely couldn't be messed up. Maybe he was just like Senior Meng guessed at that time, and he wasn't a Foundation Establishment early-stage expert. Li Jingming thought about it and said, "What do you mean?" Meng Jiuguang and the others couldn't help but be stunned. Because when I tested him just now, I felt that although he was already a Foundation Establishment early-stage expert, his aura wasn't stable. It looked like he had just broken through not long ago. So I guess that he might have taken the Trial Reward Foundation Establishment pill. So he just broke through. Li Jingming deliberately misled. Although Lin Yi said that he had already given the Foundation Establishment pill to someone else, Meng Jiuguang and the others didn't know. This excuse sounded reasonable. That's right. Your conjecture is logical. Meng Jiuguang clapped his hands and said, "For a Heaven Stage Great Circle expert, although the Foundation Establishment pill can't guarantee a 100% success rate, it can greatly increase the success rate. In that case, this fellow Lin Yi really got lucky. After taking the Foundation Establishment pill, he accidentally succeeded in building his foundation." Hearing him say that, Su Lingqiong and the others came to a realization. The Foundation Establishment pill was a very precious thing to any Heaven Stage Great Perfection expert. For the sake of stability, the vast majority of people would first save up foundation-building pills, even if they obtained them. They would do their best to raise their strength to the limit where they could not break through, and only then would they take them. Only then would they be able to maximize their chances of successfully building their foundation. However, there were also some courageous people who, after obtaining the foundation-building pill, would impatiently consume it. Although their success rate would be far inferior to the first group of people, they would still have a certain chance of successfully reaching foundation building. From Meng Jiuguang's perspective, Lin Yi was obviously the second kind of person who had gotten lucky. For everyone present, compared to Lin Yi, this guy relied on his own strength to build a foundation. Obviously, the latter speculation was more convincing. Did he really think that he could reach the Foundation Establishment stage by relying on his own strength? How could Lin Yi, a country bumpkin from the secular world, do something that even young Master Su like Su Lingqiong couldn't do? Bullshit. But no matter what, we can already confirm that Lin Yi is already an early-stage foundation-building expert. Ninth cousin, then what should I do? The ranking competition is in another day. Meng Tong couldn't help but say anxiously. Although Lin Yi's success in building his foundation was not good news to Su Lingqiong and Meng Jiuguang, it wasn't a direct threat. However, Meng Tong was different. Not only was he the biggest competitor among the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers with Lin Yi, he was also defeated by Lin Yi in one move on the first day. He still had an arranged match with Lin Yi in the ranking competition. Although he obtained second place in the trial and also held a Foundation Establishment pill in his hand, he didn't dare to rashly consume it. Otherwise, if he failed to break through to foundation building this time, not only would he waste the precious Foundation Establishment pill, moreover, because of the side effects of the Foundation Establishment pill, it would also cause the difficulty of breaking through to foundation building the next time. If that happened, Meng Tong, might not have the chance to break through to foundation building in this lifetime. If that happened, he would really not be able to find a grave even if he cried. It's all your own fault for being useless. You clearly had a Foundation Establishment pill, but you didn't dare to eat it. Now, that Lin Yi took the initiative. Meng Jiuguang glared at him unhappily, but he also understood Meng Tong's concerns. After all, if he was in Meng Tong's position, he also wouldn't dare to easily consume it. But ninth cousin, didn't you also say that in my current state, the success rate of taking the foundation establishment pill is less than 30%? How could I dare to eat it? Meng Tong said with a sullen face. Adding the foundation establishment pill, the success rate was less than 30%. This really couldn't be blamed on him being timid. Otherwise, with his personality of being in the limelight, it would be strange if he didn't have the chance to break the Welcome Pavilion's foundation establishment record and even leave his name in the history books. But then again, even if there wasn't a special case like Lenny this year, the newcomers would still be able to break the Welcome Pavilion's foundation establishment record. The reason was simple. In the past, people like Zhang Liju didn't have such a ridiculous reward like the foundation establishment pill. Other than the cave and spirit jade, they could only rely on their own hard work. If they wanted to foundation establishment, they could only rely on their own talent and hard work. And in recent years, because of Zhang Liju's intentional care, the resources of the 3 pavilions on the North Island were more than doubled. And because of this, the reward like the foundation establishment pill fell into the hands of the newcomers. Otherwise, even if the newcomers had the chance to get the foundation establishment pill, they would have to wait until the last month. How could there be such a good treatment like the foundation establishment pill in the first month? At the end of the day, they were able to get the foundation establishment pill so quickly because of Zhang Liju, the previous foundation establishment record holder. However, in the past, when they didn't have the foundation establishment pill, they could only look at it and sigh. Now that they had the foundation establishment pill, they had to worry about when to use it. Meng Tong's words were exactly what Kong Ming and Zhong Pingliang were worried about. Don't forget that they each had a foundation establishment pill in their hands. But because of the same concerns as Meng Tong, they didn't dare to use it. Originally, if everyone was only Sky Perfection, it wouldn't matter much if they saved up the foundation establishment pill. But now that there was a precedent like Lin Yi, the pressure was instantly on their heads. One had to know that the ranking competition was very different from the newcomers' test. This time, the newcomers of the 3 pavilions were going to do it together. If they were still Sky Perfection, and they had to face Lin Yi, who was at the early phase of foundation establishment, then the situation wouldn't be optimistic. Chapter 3698. For a moment, the whole place was dead silent. Even a young master like Su Lingchong was helpless when faced with Lin Yi, who suddenly became a foundation establishment realm master. Kong Ming hesitated for a moment and suddenly said, "Master Su, I heard that there's a type of foundation establishment elixir that can greatly increase the success rate of foundation establishment." Su Lingchong looked at him and nodded. "That's right. If you take the foundation establishment elixir in your current state, the success rate is only 30%. But if it's combined with the foundation establishment elixir, the success rate will be at least 70%. If it's a supreme grade foundation establishment elixir, the success rate can even reach 90%. However, this elixir has a short shelf life. Once it's made, it must be consumed within a day. That's why it's hard to find in the market. Most of the time, you can't buy it even if you want to. You have to go through special channels." Kong Ming and the others looked at each other, their eyes burning with passion. A 30% success rate wasn't enough, but if it was above 70%, it would be much more reliable. Moreover, if it was a supreme grade foundation establishment elixir, the success rate could reach 90%. Then, with Master Su's background and connections, it shouldn't be hard to get this elixir, right? Kong Ming said carefully, "Master Su, you know that we have a huge grudge against Lenny. If we don't do anything these 2 days, we might embarrass you in the ranking competition when we face Lin Yi, who is at the early stage of foundation establishment realm." Su Lingchong thought for a moment and looked at the hopeful Kong Ming and the others. "How about this? I'll make a trip to the Alchemy Hall tomorrow and ask them for some foundation establishment elixir with my name." "Thank you, Master Su." Kong Ming was overjoyed. Zhong Pingliang and Meng Tong also thanked him profusely. Su Lingchong glanced at Meng Tong. foundation establishment elixir wasn't a common item. Originally, he only wanted to give it to Kong Ming Ming and Zhong Pingliang. After all, these two people were his direct subordinates, and Ming Tong was at most an outsider. How could he be qualified to receive the same treatment as Kong Ming Ming? However, on second thought, his main purpose for appearing here today was to deal with Lin Yi, and Ming Tong could be considered as cannon fodder at the front line. If this guy's strength was too weak, he would be bullied by Lin Yi too much. Let's just treat it as letting him off easy this time. After all, it's just a small matter in passing. Li Jingming watched all of this with the cold eyes of a bystander. In his heart, he thought that Ming Tong was really lucky this time. However, he was not envious of this kind of luck. His priority now was to keep a low profile. If he succeeded in building his foundation too early, it would be easy to attract attention. On the contrary, it was not a good thing. What's more, he came from a prestigious family. As long as he had enough time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to succeed in building his foundation with his own strength. Compared to these people in front of him who took the foundation establishment elixir and elixir, although it looked enviable. Compared to the foundation establishment masters who relied on their own strength to break through, there was a natural gap in strength. It was not the best choice. However, if Su Lingchong really got them the foundation establishment elixir, then he had to inform Boss Lin Yi in advance. Otherwise, even if Boss Lin Yi was already a master of the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment, he would suddenly encounter these three early stage foundation establishment masters like Kong Ming Ming. He was afraid that he would still be caught unprepared. What Li Jingming didn't know was that even if he didn't inform Lin Yi would still be able to receive the news in advance. After all, other than him, Lin Yi still had Zhong Pingliang, the spy he had planted long ago. After being praised by Kong Ming Ming and the others, Su Lingchong changed the topic. Actually, to this young master, it doesn't matter what the strength of that kid Lin Yi is. Even if he's a master at the early stage of foundation establishment, in this young master's eyes, he's still just an insignificant ant. However, in this trial, I discovered a very bad sign. This kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth has already started to touch my bottom line. What sign? Meng Jueguang and the others all pricked up their ears. Su Lingchong glanced at them. Haven't you guys realized that since who knows when this kid has actually started to form a relationship with little junior sister Shangguan Laner? Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong heard this and immediately looked at each other. The two of them had the most say in this matter. For Lin Yi to be able to get to know Shangguan Laner, the two of them could be considered to have played a huge role. However, they didn't dare to tell this to Su Lingchong. What if this young master, Su, took his anger out on them? It was wiser to pretend that they didn't know anything. Su Lingchong's face was gloomy as he continued. I don't need to say more about Shangguan Laner's identity. Although it's normal for a little princess of noble birth like her to be curious about a commoner like Lin Yi, and there's no lack of stories of a fair, rich, and beautiful woman falling in love with a poor man, I absolutely won't allow this kind of thing to happen to Shangguan Laner. She's mine. Other than me, no one else can touch her. This was the main reason why he brought people to look for Meng Jueguang today. Otherwise, if it was just to deal with Lin Yi, there was no need for him to show himself. He only needed to let someone pass a message to everyone present. Young Master Su's words are indeed very dangerous. Lin Yi is famous for being a womanizer when he was in the secular world. Take the 7 inheritors who were responsible for transporting us, for example. Every one of them is a great beauty, but every one of them is entangled with Lin Yi. Miss Shangguan is a little girl who doesn't know the ways of the world. Once this guy sets his eyes on her, she'll easily fall into his hands. At that time, if he really becomes the son-in-law of the Shangguan family, it'll be big trouble. Kong Ming Ming added oil to the fire. And with every sentence that Kong Ming Ming said, Su Lingchong's face became more gloomy. When he finished speaking, Su Lingchong's face was already as gloomy as water, and there was even a piercingly cold, murderous intention. Before this, although Lin Yi openly went against him, He had always treated Lin Yi as an ant and disdained him. But this time, the matter involved Shanghai Laner, who he had long determined to be his exclusive property, and the nature was completely different. So we must nip this in the bud. Su Lingchong gritted his teeth and said, "We must find a way to make Lon or hate Lin Yi. If we can't do this, then we can only take a risk and think of a way to kill Lin Yi." Everyone present shuddered at the same time. This time, young Master Su really had the intention to kill. Young Master Su, although it's easier to kill Lin Yi directly, it's too risky. It's better to think of other ways unless it's absolutely necessary. Zhong Pingyang hurriedly reminded, "You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.